Chapter 31. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Chapter 31. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Su Zimo headed north from Pingyang town, crossing Songlang mountain range and entered the territory of the country of Yen. Su Zimo did not ride a horse along the way. Given his full speed right now, no horse was powerful enough to be able to catch up to him. The weather had turned cold, and early winter had arrived. But Su Zimo was burning hot, white clouds of vapor rising from the top of his head. While Su Zimo hurried along the way, he was applying the bone-strengthening sutra. His legs alternated in an amazing speed. Not even a shadow of his could be seen. Divine steed fleeting. This style in the bone-strengthening section was known for its speed. Plow Heaven stride was used to train the strength in the legs, and every stride came with tremendous force. On the other hand, Divine Steed Fleeting was all about speed. Through mastering the foundation of body tempering section and tendons transformation section, and by working one's muscles and shaking one's tendons, the bones were strengthened through constant beating and hitting. If one achieved initial success in the bone strengthening section, once the person exerted strength, there would be cracking crisp sounds of the bones. When the person achieved phenomenal success, all the tendons and bones would give out loud sounds. After cultivating the bone strengthening section, one's physical strength would be significantly increased. By using the Divine Steed style, one could travel 500 kilometers a day, and 400 kilometers a night. No other demon could match up to this kind of superb stamina. To travel from Pingyang town to the country of Yen, a level 10 perfected Qi refinement warrior would need about 10 days while traveling day and night without rest. After mastering Divine Steed Fleeting, Su Zimo was able to reach the country of Yen on the 8th day. Along the way, Su Zimo walked at full speed, as swift as the wind, constantly using the breathing and expiration method of bone strengthening section, never stopping for 1 second. This was all thanks to the scarlet flame fruit that sealed the huge source of essence in his body. This was why Su Zimo was able to keep cultivating. Su Zimo carried the sanguine crystal bow on his back and the cold moon saber around his waist, and was travel-worn when he arrived at the capital city of the country of Yen. He had yet to enter the city, but he could tell that the city was tightly guarded. There were dozens of armored guards standing on the two sides of the city gate, checking the pedestrians one by one. Su Zimo carried a casual expression and walked up to the city gate. One of the guards stopped Su Zimo, sizing him up. There was mockery in his eyes as he smiled softly. "You are just a poor scholar. Why did you carry a bow and saber with you? Bluffing people?" Su Zimo was clad in his usual green robe. He had a fair complexion and delicate features. He did not seem like someone who practiced martial arts. That was why the guards found it odd that a scholar carried a bow and saber with him. Su Zimo remained composed, carrying a smile, not making any comments. "Hey, that poor guy, take the saber at your waist and let me take a look. Has it been edged?" Haha. Another city guard who was further away joined in the fun as well. There was a change in Su Zimo's countenance as he slowly reached his hands toward Cold Moon's saber. Su Zimo had no wish to start a fight at the city gate. Once he started the killing spree here, all the city guards would come at him. Qi refinement warriors might even be here as well. Even if Su Zimo managed to survive and go all the way to the palace, the king of Yen would have gone into hiding. Just when Su Zimo's hand rested on the hilt of Cold Moon's saber, the commander of the guards who stood by the side saw the scene and laughed while he lamented his troops. "Damn, you guys only know how to bully a scholar. Hey, scholar, you can ignore them and enter the city." Su Zimo relaxed slightly and nodded toward the man, before he entered the city. Su Zimo located Sky Treasure Pavilion and went to the second level. He intended to deposit Sanguine Crystal Bow and Cold Moon Saber at this place for the time being. These two weapons were too eye-catching. It was impossible for him to bring them into the palace. With the Sky Treasure Badge, Su Zimo was able to deposit items for free. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion at the country of Yen gave a soft sigh when Su Zimo took out his Sky Treasure Badge. He smiled as he asked, "Young master, can I take a look at your badge?" Su Zimo handed his Sky Treasure Gold badge over. There was an odd look on the manager's face when he looked at the badge. "Why, is anything wrong?" Su Zimo frowned. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion immediately shook his head, smiling as brightly as before, handing the Sky Treasure Gold badge back. There's no problem. When do you intend to retrieve the items? If everything goes as planned, it will be tomorrow. With that, Su Zimo turned to leave Sky Treasure Pavilion. After Su Zimo left, the smile on the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion vanished and he looked grim. Manager, is the Sky Treasure Gold badge fake? The person is no Chi refinement warrior, yet he has a Sky Treasure Gold badge. He is indeed suspicious, one of the workers at Sky Treasure Pavilion asked. It's not fake. It is 100% real. The manager shook his head, frowning, deep in his thoughts. The morning of the next day, the ministers gathered outside the palace, ready to go to the royal court to see the King of Yen. Su Zimo was among one of them. After achieving initial success at Tendon's transformation, Su Zimo was able to shrink and move the muscles on his face, making changes to his facial appearance. But he was unable to change his body shape. If he reached phenomenal success at Tendon's transformation, he would be able to have a complete transformation, changing his body shape. If he could achieve phenomenal success at bone strengthening, he would even be able to shrink and expand his bones, changing his height to become a totally different person. Last night, Su Zimo knocked a civil official named Shangguan Yu unconscious, and took his place to attend the morning session today. Brother Shangguan, I have not seen you for a few days and you seem to have grown taller. One man next to him came over to chat with him. Su Zimo remained silent, not reacting to his words. One was bound to have a slip of the tongue if he talked too much. Moreover, Su Zimo might have changed his facial appearance, but he was unable to have the same voice as Shangguan Yu. Seeing that Su Zimo did not reply to him, the person turned around in embarrassment after inviting a snub. He no longer chatted with Su Zimo. Clang, clang, clang. The bell tower rang. All the civil and martial officials tidied their appearance and walked in 2 rows toward the palace. An old man in his 50s to 60s, with a crown on his head and in a dragon robe sat in the center of the palace, perched high up. His gaze was fiery, looking majestic and awe-inspiring from sitting on the throne for many years. This was the King of Yen. There were 4 Chi refinement warriors in Taoist robes on the 2 sides of the King of Yen. They looked relaxed, as if they were taking a short rest. The civil and martial officials entered the palace, kneeled before the king and shouted in a loud voice, "All hail the king!" This sound echoed in the palace. It was loud and forceful. He Zhao Qian. While the officials were greeting the king, someone sneered among the crowd. It was particularly jarring. Zhao Qian was the name of the King of Yen. Who dared to call the king by their name in front of the king himself? All the officials were alarmed, looking toward the sound. A man was seen walking out from the crowd. He took off his official's robe, revealing a green robe inside. Shangguan Yu, you must be crazy. How dare you offend the king? One of the martial officials snarled, but he noticed that the facial appearance of the green-robed man was undergoing odd changes. He turned into another person in the blink of an eye. This. All the officials thought that they were seeing things. They rubbed their eyes and widened their eyes to take a closer look. He was not Shangguan Yu. The 4 Chi refinement warriors who sat next to the King of Yen frowned, sweeping their gaze over Su Zimo. They sneered when they discovered that the man had no spirit Chi. To them, changing facial appearances was merely a small trick. The King of Yen remained composed all along. His gaze was swift and fierce. He stared at Su Zimo, speaking in a cold voice. Who are you? Don't you recognize me? Su Zimo smiled and asked, do you still remember Su Mu? Pest. There was a commotion within the officials. This name was a taboo in the country of Yen. No one dared to speak of it in front of the King of Yen. The King of Yen squinted his eyes and took a closer look at Su Zimo. The King of Yen raised his head and laughed after a long while. Ha 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 ha, are you his son? Yes. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. Su Hong is my older brother. Oh. The King of Yen raised his eyebrows and ridiculed him. What is your intention by coming to my palace? Su Zimo said softly, I am here to kill you. Hee. Ha ha. All the officials broke out into laughter. To them, Su Zimo, the frail scholar, was like an idiot who spoke conceited nonsense. Poof. The King of Yen could not help but laugh as he nodded. This is interesting, very interesting. Su Zimo once told Uncle Zhang that he never thought of assassinating the king of Yen. He was telling the truth. Regardless of whether it was covert killing or assassination, to Su Zimo, it was not enough to appease his rage and the injustice done to his family. That would be letting the king of Yen off too easily. Su Zimo had to kill the king of Yen, and he would do it openly, in front of all the officials. Su Zimo wanted the king of Yen and the entire world to know that it was Su Mu's descendants who killed the king of Yen. It was only through this way could he feel the slightest pleasure and appease his anger and hatred. The king of Yen shook his head, feeling slightly emotional. I didn't expect that the two sons of Su Mu would be vastly different. Su Hong endured it for 16 years and planned the assassination for years. He only dared to lay an ambush and to assassinate me. How dare you have the impudence to come to my palace and threaten to kill me? How dare you, and on what basis? The king of Yen sneered. To me, Su Hong is considered as somewhat capable. And you? Hee, you are merely an ignorant man who is brave, but lacks wisdom and tact. Ignorant man? Su Zimo smiled, raising his head as he asked, Zhao Qian, have you heard of this saying? Once the ignorant man was enraged, he would cause bloodshed within 5 steps. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. With that, there was a bright glitter in Su Zimo's eyes. He exuded a piercing cold and murderous aura. The temperature of the main hall seemed to drop suddenly. Chapter 32. Slay the King. Chapter 32. Slay the King. Not good. The Qi refinement warriors sitting by both sides of the King of Yen stood up suddenly. Their countenances changed greatly. It was extremely dangerous. Suddenly, this seemingly weak and frail scholar had changed into a different person. The aura that he emanated made the 4 Qi refinement warriors terror-stricken. Such was already the case for the Qi refinement warriors, much less the rest of the people in the main hall. Some of the civil officials were so frightened that they dropped to the ground, paralyzed and numb. Bang! Both Su Zimo's feet landed on the floor and gave out a deafening thud. The floor laid with gold bricks split on impact, causing a long and huge crack to appear on it. Below the cracks was like a dark and spooky hell that emitted a cold and sinister aura. The entire palace was shaking violently. Dust fell. The sky and ground were seemingly on the brink of collapse, and the atmosphere was absolutely terrifying. If one did not see it with his own eyes, no one dared to believe that the scene before them was caused by one individual. Su Zimo had already disappeared from the earlier spot. His figure dashed ahead like a divine and savage steed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the King of Yen. Fast. It was too fast. The earlier spot that Su Zimo stood was at least 10 feet away from the King of Yen. However, everyone only felt their eyes blur for a moment before Su Zimo appeared just 1 elbow away from the King of Yen. At this moment, the 4 Qi refinement warriors beside the King of Yen had just searched out their spirit weapons from their storage bags. The reaction time of the two sides were on completely different levels. It was not until this moment that everyone in the main hall finally understood Su Zimo's earlier words. Although he was 10 feet away from the King of Yen, to Su Zimo, that was only considered an elbow's length. At such a close range, one would not be able to beat an ordinary man even when he had the aid of the entire country. Why you? What are you doing? The King of Yen was so frightened that his liver and gall were almost splitting. Scared out of his wits, his eyes were filled with horror and he backed off instinctively. Su Zimo's expression was chilling and cold. He conveniently hurled off the crown on the King of Yen's head. The latter's hair fell all over his face, making him look unkempt and embarrassed. Su Zimo stepped forward, reached out his palm, grabbed the King of Yen's hair and lifted him up. Ah! The King of Yen screamed when he felt the severe pain coming from his scalp. Beads of sweat could be seen on his forehead and his limbs turned cold. Mortal, how dare you? Release the King of Yen quickly. Otherwise, you will face death for sure. 2 of the 4 Qi refinement warriors were controlling flying swords. Another one was directing a long saber. The remaining one was controlling a roulette with sharp edges. Out of the 4 spirit weapons, only the roulette had a spirit pattern and was an inferior-grade spirit weapon. The other 3 weapons suspended in the air were pseudo-spirit weapons. They were aimed at the vital points on Su Zimo's body and were waiting for an opportune time to strike. Su Zimo did not seem bothered. He dragged the King of Yan's hair and took a few steps back. He used his backhand grip to pick up the long saber that was placed horizontally on the rack behind him. Clang! Sounds of sharp blades unsheathing resonated across the main hall. The lingering sounds were so creepy that it sent chills up one's spine. Su Zimo placed the long saber on the King of Yan's neck horizontally. The King of Yan could feel the coldness from the sharp blade. Shortly after, he was having goosebumps all over. "My name is Su Zimo. Remember me." Su Zimo's voice rang in his ears. There was not the slightest change in Su Zimo's emotions. Yet, the King of Yan felt very nervous. "Su Zimo, do you know that the Imperial Army and Royal Guards total over 150,000 people? Coupled with the immortal cultivation clan behind me, you won't be able to escape even if you can fly." The King of Yan was the ruler of a country after all. When his life was at stake, he tried his best to regain his composure, forcefully suppressed his fears and said while gritting his teeth, "Why don't I make a deal with you?" "Hee hee." Su Zimo laughed. At the sound of this laughter, the King of Yan's heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. He could sense that Su Zimo was hell-bent on killing him. Swoosh! At this very moment, the King of Yan could hear the sounds of weapons moving in the air at lightning speed. The Qi Refinement Warrior is taking action. The King of Yan rejoiced in his heart. As long as the Qi Refinement Warrior could kill Su Zimo with one slash of the sword, he would still have a chance to live. The Qi Refinement Warrior who made the move was standing behind Su Zimo. The distance between the two was too close. He was less than 10 feet away. The flying sword stabbed towards the blind spot of Su Zimo's sight. It approached the back of Su Zimo's brains like a flash of light at that instant. The eyes of the other 3 Qi Refinement Warriors lit up. It looked like the flying sword was going to stab the back of Su Zimo's brains. As if eyes were grown on his back and without turning his head, Su Zimo suddenly swung his arms behind his head and wrapped that flying sword gently, seemingly not using much strength. The expression of the attacking Qi Refinement Warrior changed. He discovered that he had actually lost control of the flying sword. The Qi Refinement Warrior had wound his own spirit Qi around the flying sword to control the weapon. He could direct the sword with his hands for the purpose of attacking or defending. However, how powerful was the bovine-tongued saber? Under the wrapping, the spirit Qi of the flying sword dissipated instantly. Su Zimo flipped his hand and threw the sword away. Poof! The flying sword pierced through the chest of the Qi Refinement Warrior and drew out a streak of blood. Unhindered, it pierced into the wall of the main hall ruthlessly, the blade trembling non-stop. The entire process seemed slow when narrated, but it occurred very quickly. From the moment that the Qi Refinement Warrior took action to the point where the sword pierced through his body, it took less than the moment of a breath. This man's expression was dazed, his eyes filled with disbelief and losing focus as he landed on the floor with a loud thud. Pest! The remaining 3 Qi Refinement Warriors gasped and took a few steps back instinctively. They were trying to distance themselves from Su Zimo. If the earlier sword from Su Zimo was thrown towards any of them, none of them could have dodged it. The speed of that sword was completely beyond their response time. Hurry! Go and notify Senior Brother Lu for reinforcements. One of the 3 Qi Refinement Warriors looked terrified. He dashed towards the back of the main hall and disappeared in the blink of an eye. To the King of Yan, these few moments of breath seemed 100 years long. They had failed. Even the Qi Refinement Warriors failed when they took actions. All this while, the long saber on the neck of the King of Yan had never left him by an inch. Su Zimo lowered his head slightly and whispered into the ears of King of Yan. "Zhao Qian, do you know that, the moment that I stepped into the palace, you were already a dead man? If I say that I will kill you, no one can save you even when you search high and low for a savior." There was pin-drop silence in the wide and spacious main hall. Seemingly, everyone had been stunned by an individual's aura and kept mum out of fear. Su Zimo's voice was not loud. It was light and calm, as if he was chatting with the King of Yan. However, behind this voice, everyone could feel the murderous intent that made one's heart shudder. The King of Yan was shivering with fear all over. His teeth clattered loudly non-stop. "Zhao Qian, you don't need to be afraid. It is just one slash. There won't be any pain. Su Zimo's gaze was icy cold. He said word by word, I will send you on the road to apologize to my parents. Poof. The large head of the King of Yen had been cut off by Su Zimo in one slash. He was holding it in his hands. Even upon his death, the King of Yan's eyes were popped out wide and filled with horror. In fact, before the slash, the King of Yen had already died of fear. He had been frightened till death when he was alive. Ta, ta, ta. Successive footsteps could be heard coming from outside the palace. The imperial army of the Kingdom of Yen had already rushed here. Su Zimo tied the King of Yan's head on his waist and surveyed the surroundings. Shaking the long saber in his hands and exuding a murderous aura, he said coldly, the King of Yen is already dead. Anyone who stops me shall not be spared. Chapter 33. The Powerful Repression. Chapter 33. The Powerful Repression. Just as Su Zimo beheaded the King of Yen, the hundreds of civil and military officials in the main hall panicked and were at a loss over what to do. Some fainted on the spot with their eyes rolled back, while some fled outside without even turning back. Among the crowd who fled, there was an excited gleam in the eyes of one of the martial officials despite his terrified expression. When this person ran to a corner outside the palace, an ordinary-looking soldier nearby immediately joined him. The person said in a low voice, quickly leave the palace and send a pigeon post to City Lord Luo. Tell him that the King of Yen is already dead and the important event can be realized. Order received. That soldier quickened his steps and left the palace. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the crowd. In the main hall, Su Zimo held the long saber with his right hand. With the King of Yan's head hung on his waist, he wanted to dash outside but he suddenly heard someone hollering behind him. Who are you? How dare you come to the palace and behave so atrociously? Su Zimo looked back. Both Su Zimo and that person who spoke were frozen for a moment. The person who spoke had a gaunt and thin face and he wore a wide and long robe. His left sleeves looked empty. He was a one-armed man. This person was none other than the level 8 Chi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan who escaped a narrow death when Su Zimo paralyzed one of his arms in Songlang Mountain Range. It's you. The one-armed Chi refinement warrior recognized Su Zimo at one glance. The fearsomeness in his eyes instantly turned into fear and panic. Although the condition of his wounds had already stabilized, he was often awakened by nightmares in recent nights. That wild man in Songlang Mountain Range was even more terrifying and savage than spirit beasts. He was like a recurring nightmare that would not go away. Su Zimo laughed. With a sinister stare, he said in a spooky manner, So, you are the one. All of you, stop him. I'm going to send a message to the clan. The one-armed Chi refinement warrior could sense Su Zimo's murderous intent. He did not think of resisting at all. After shouting, he actually escaped to the direction where he came from atop his flying sword. The one-armed Chi refinement warrior was very clear of Su Zimo's weakness. If he wanted to escape from Su Zimo's clutches, he would have to use sword kinesis flight. The ceiling in the palace had a certain height and he was worried that he would not be able to leave Su Zimo's range of attack. As long as he escaped to the outside to the boundless sky and sea, he could then survive. Su Zimo slid his soles and dashed forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of one of the Chi refinement warriors. He supinated his hands and gave a punch. Bang! Just as this man drew out his spirit weapon, his head exploded on the impact of Su Zimo's punch and he died on the spot. After he was enlightened about divine steed fleeting, Su Zimo's speed increased further and he could close in with even more ease. Once Su Zimo closed in on the Chi refinement warrior, it meant that the latter's death was imminent. Chi! The only level 8 Chi refinement warrior in the main hall directed the inferior-grade spirit weapon towards Su Zimo. There was a flash of radiance on the roulette spirit weapon. The spirit pattern shown, the power and speed of the spirit weapon increased greatly. Without even looking at it, Su Zimo supinated his hands and slashed with his long saber. Snap! The long saber broke and the roulette speed reduced greatly upon the huge and astonishing impact. Su Zimo stretched out his palm and placed it on the roulette gently. Rap and vibrate. The roulette had already fallen into his hands. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo had never paused. He bumped into the arms of another Qi refinement warrior, exerted all his strength and leaned towards him. Bang! This man was flung off instantly. In mid-air, his body suddenly exploded and disintegrated. Broken arms and legs were flying around and blood and flesh splattered all over. In a few moments, Su Zimo had broken away from the encirclement of the few Qi refinement warrior and dashed towards the one-armed Qi refinement warrior. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior was escaping very quickly. While he was flying on the sword, he was furiously penning down something. It was uncertain what he was writing. The moment the one-armed Qi refinement warrior escaped out of the palace, he threw the thing in his hands towards the sky. Su Zimo watched carefully. There was a lifelike, white paper crane the size of a palm in mid-air. It was shining with spirit light. After fluttering its wings a few times, it flew towards a distance and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Su Zimo vaguely guessed that this white paper crane was a talisman of the cultivation world. It was a means of communication. Although he was aware of this, Su Zimo could not stop it. The sword kinesis flight speed of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior was not as quick as Su Zimo. With the delay, Su Zimo almost caught with him. This man was terrified. He rampantly circulated spirit Qi into his flying sword. The flying sword rose and dashed higher up in the sky. You were lucky to have escaped the last time. Today, you will stay here. At the sight of the Qi refinement warrior about to dash into the sky, Su Zimo hollered and threw up the roulette that he had picked up in passing. Ooh! The roulette transformed into a flash of light, broke through the empty sky, giving out intense and terrifying sounds as the winds roared. Although one was in the sky and the other on the ground, they were not too far from each other. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior wanted to avoid it but was too late. In that split second, the one-armed Qi refinement warrior gritted his teeth. Disregarding whether he would fall off, he controlled the flying sword on his feet, wanting to block the roulette that was shooting over. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere as the sword and roulette clashed into each other. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior's expression suddenly changed. The spirit Qi on his flying sword actually dissipated instantly. The flying sword lost control upon the impact of the collision and reversed towards him at an even faster speed. Poof! The entire flying sword pierced into the belly of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior. That was a Qi refinement warrior's lifeline and sea of Qi. The broken sea of Qi meant that over 10 years of his cultivation from painstaking efforts had gone to waste. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior fell from the sky and landed heavily on the floor. Dust flew all over and successive sounds of bones breaking could be heard coming from inside his body. Looking ghastly pale and blood foaming from the mouth, the one-armed Qi refinement warrior saw Su Zimo striding towards him. Endless malice and resentment flashed across his eyes. With a ferocious expression, he laughed crazily and said, "You are finished. I have just notified the clan. Not long after, Foundation establishment cultivators will rush over to slay you. You will come down to keep me company very soon." Ha 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 ha. Oh! Su Zimo raised his brows and said, "So there aren't any Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital then?" The one-armed Qi refinement officer was stunned. "Thanks for the information. It looks like I, Su Zimo, am not destined to die yet. Even the capital city of the country of Yen cannot stop me." Su Zimo's expression was cold and aloof. He stepped forward and trampled on the skull of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior, crushing it. He took this man's storage bag and put it away in his arms before dashing outside. If there were Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital, coupled with other Qi refinement officers, city guards and the Imperial Army, it would be very difficult for Su Zimo to leave the capital. This was because there was a huge gap of one realm between the Foundation establishment cultivator and Qi refinement warrior. This was a great leap in quality, and the strong powers erupted by Foundation establishment cultivators was enough to kill Su Zimo. On the other hand, without the Foundation establishment cultivators, even level 10 perfected Qi refinement warriors would be of little threat to Su Zimo. "I have to make my way out as soon as possible," Su Zimo told himself quietly. If he were to dawdle too long in the capital, he would eventually land himself in a hard battle when the Foundation establishment cultivators from Joyful Clan arrived. It would be hard for him to escape death then. The Imperial Army of the King of Yen formed a massive array, holding spears as they dashed forward fearlessly. At one glance, they were impenetrable. Kill! 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 Hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army hollered angrily together. The sound was deafening. A massive and powerful aura engulfed the entire place, slamming towards Su Zimo as if wanting to drown him. The Imperial army was absolutely loyal to the King of Yen. They were resolute and determined. Although Su Zimo was so powerful that he could kill Qi refinement warriors, the Imperial army was fearless and did not back off. Every member of the Imperial army had a gaze that was as sharp as a sword. Carrying a chilling expression, they had strong murderous intent. The congregation of hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army erupted a powerful and unwavered determination that astonished the minds and hearts. This was the power of a country. Enshrouded by this massive aura and the frightening willpower, even Qi refinement warriors who came would have long been scared out of their wits and turned cowardly prior to fighting. However, Su Zimo's expression remained unchanged. Instead, the brilliance in his eyes intensified. Su Zimo took a long and deep breath and circulated the Anaconda Eclipse Heart Sutra. His chest bulged and lifted, seemingly wanting to devour the sun and moon. Pausing for a moment, he suddenly opened his mouth. Ah! Su Zimo gave a long yell. A humongous flow of energy surged out of Su Zimo's mouth. His voice was booming in high pitch, penetrating gold and cracking stones, and shrouding the shouts of the 100,000s of the Imperial army instantly. Many members of the Imperial army revealed a pained expression. The weapons in their hands dropped and they covered their ears with both hands. In Songlang Mountain Range, Su Zimo had personally witnessed a spirit demon roaring loudly and shattering the body of small and weak spirit beasts with that force. Although his yell was not that lethal, it was still astonishing and powerful. How could ordinary people withstand that? Boom! Su Zimo took a step out, causing the ground to tremble. Black bricks split open and sandstones flew all over. The King of Yen is already dead. Who dares to stop me? At this moment, it was as if Su Zimo had been possessed by a powerful ancient demon. The murderous aura was stifling, seemingly wanting to destroy the entire world. It subdued the aura of the hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army troops almost instantly. Many of the soldiers in the Imperial army turned ghastly pale with dazed expressions. They actually fell to the ground with wobbly legs. The Imperial army was in chaos. The strong and powerful aura gathered earlier was swept away immediately, revealing faint signs of defeat. At this juncture, Su Zimo laughed loudly. He was looking disdainfully at everyone out of the corner of his eyes. The aura was towering. The ordinary man in the eyes of the King of Yen was repressing the power of a country. Chapter 34. The Intense Battle in the Capital. Chapter 34. The Intense Battle in the Capital. The Imperial army suffered a major setback. Su Zimo had not even made any moves to attack. He only dashed around madly in the swarm of soldiers with plow heaven stride. In 10 minutes, he had already forced his way out. Bang, bang, bang. The areas that Su Zimo had passed through were in great chaos. There were hundreds of thousands of the Imperial army trying to hold him back. Yet, he was seemingly in a no-man's territory and no one could halt his steps. Su Zimo circulated body petrification. The muscles in his entire body tightened until they were as hard as rocks and his defensive ability increased greatly. When the Imperial army pierced Su Zimo with the golden spears in their hands, the spears would either slip off or break on the spot. They could not hurt Su Zimo at all. Not long after, Su Zimo had already dashed out of the palace. At this moment, Su Zimo sensed great danger in his heart. When he was running, he suddenly made dodging moves and lowered his body like an anaconda slithering close to the ground. Swoosh! A cold beam of sword light streaked across the top of Su Zimo's head. It was a Qi refinement warrior. Su Zimo rose. He dashed diagonally towards the direction where the sword came from like a wild bull, hurling off many of the Imperial army by the side. The Qi refinement warrior who was hiding in the crowd saw his flying sword come to nothing. Just as he tried to redirect the flying sword, before he could even recover his senses, he discovered that all of the Imperial army in front blocking him from view had already fallen to the ground. The blood-drenched Su Zimo had already closed in on him. It was too late for this person to dodge. Bang! Su Zimo casually punched him and the latter was flung away. The eyes of this Qi refinement warrior had lost focus. His chest collapsed, his bones shattered and pierced into his lungs. Before his body touched the ground, he had already stopped breathing. With the power erupted from Su Zimo's body, even if he did not make any moves, the Qi Refinement Warrior would not be able to withstand any one casual punch or kick from him as well. At this moment, the capital was in great chaos. More and more Qi Refinement Warriors gathered as they rushed over from various places across the city. During this time, there were already about 10 of them who had taken hostile action against Su Zimo. Initially, these Qi Refinement Warriors hid among the Imperial Army and guards while directing the flying sword to attack Su Zimo. However, after Su Zimo killed a few of them, the remaining Qi Refinement Warriors were feeling scared. They realized that Su Zimo could find them even if they hid in the crowd. The Imperial Army and city guards could not stop Su Zimo at all. One after another, many Qi Refinement Warriors rose into the air, surrounding and attacking Su Zimo. Although this would deplete their spirit Qi faster, Su Zimo could not pose a threat to them then. The worst situation had occurred. In such a circumstance whereby dozens of Qi Refinement Warriors constantly attacked him, Su Zimo could still circulate body petrification to endure the attacks from the lower-level Qi Refinement Warriors. However, Su Zimo had to dodge the attacks from the level 9 and perfected Qi Refinement Warriors when they unsheathed their inferior-grade spirit weapons. The hardest part was that Su Zimo had no way to retaliate. In addition, Su Zimo's speed would definitely decrease if he were to rely solely on his spirit perception to dodge the attacks of the Qi Refinement Warrior. Coupled with the constant harassment by the Imperial Army and guards surrounding him, Su Zimo could very possibly lose his life in the capital. Everyone, there is no need to panic. This lad can't leave the place. As long as we unanimously join forces and detain him in the capital, the Foundation establishment cultivators from my joyful clan will arrive very soon. In mid-air, a perfected Qi Refinement Warrior said loudly. At this very moment, Su Zimo suddenly turned back and smiled at that person. He had a strange look in his eyes. This person's heart froze. He flew on the flying sword and quickly retreated so that he could distance himself from Su Zimo. Barely anyone had noticed that Su Zimo came all the way to the palace from an inconspicuous corner, and not the main gate of the capital. That was where the Sky Treasure Pavilion was located. Su Zimo rushed out of the Imperial Army's entrapment and headed towards a wall ahead of him. Swoosh! The moment that Su Zimo hit the wall suddenly transformed into a glistening water curtain and Su Zimo's figure disappeared from sight. Many members of the Imperial Army were stunned on the spot. Some people did not believe it. They slammed their skulls on it but ended up falling to the ground with broken and bleeding heads. The Qi Refinement Warrior in the mid-air furrowed his brows tightly. Of course, they were aware that the place was the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, what shocked them was that Su Zimo could enter and leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion as he wished, although he was not a Qi Refinement Warrior. This proved that he had the Sky Treasure badge. Senior Brother Li, what should we do? One of the Qi Refinement Warriors asked in a low voice. The Sky Treasure Pavilion was the largest trading house in the Great Zhou dynasty and had a superior status. Killing and fighting was banned in the premise. There was once a situation where Foundation establishment cultivators stirred up trouble in the Sky Treasure Pavilion and ended up being killed on the spot. There had been rumors in the Great Zhou dynasty that the Sky Treasure Pavilion's backing was the monarch of the Great Zhou dynasty. No matter how gutsy these Qi Refinement Warriors were, they dared not enter the place to catch people. No need to worry. This person cannot always hide inside. He will have to come out sooner or later. When the clan elders rush here and communicate with Sky Treasure Pavilion, I don't believe that Sky Treasure Pavilion will jeopardize their relationship with Joyful Clan for the sake of one mortal. On the second floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, the manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion had been startled awake. Blinking his sleepy eyes, he asked the waiting staff beside him, "What happened outside? Why is it so chaotic? I heard that the King of Yen has been killed and the murderer is on the run." "He's not caught yet." "No." Listening to what the people outside said, he did not seem to be a Qi Refinement Warrior. However, he knows corporal mortification martial arts. He is invulnerable and has very strong close combat ability. Many Qi Refinement Warriors have already died in his hands. Could it be him? The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion muttered and frowned as a figure flashed across his mind. At this very moment, he could hear footsteps coming from the main hall. The speed of the visitor was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, The footsteps had already ascended to the second floor. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion focused his sight. He only saw a young man drenched in blood heading over directly with a bloody head hanging on his waist. That face on the bloody head no doubt belonged to the King of Yen. I came to collect the Cold Moon Saber and Sanguine Crystal Bow, the visitor said in a deep voice. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion trembled all over and sobered up instantly. Swallowing his saliva, he nodded and said, "Okay, I will get them." After a few moments, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion brought the Cold Moon Saber and Sky Treasure Pavilion to Su Zimo. These two pseudo-spirit weapons were too heavy. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had to use spirit chi to control them and could barely bring them over. "Thank you so much." The visitor hung the Cold Moon Saber on his waist. Fastening the quiver on his back and holding the Sanguine Crystal Bow with his hands, he turned and left. It was only until the visitor disappeared did the waiting staff at the side heave a long sigh of relief and gradually calmed down. This man is very scary. I even have feelings of fear and trepidation when I stand before him, the waiting staff said. After pausing shortly, he then had a moment of realization before exclaiming in shock, "Don't tell me that he is the one who killed the King of Yen?" "Who is he? Why did he kill the King of Yen?" The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had a grave expression. After considering for a long time, he searched out a white paper crane from a storage bag. Releasing some spirit chi from his fingertip, he wrote a line of words, "The King of Yen is already dead. The group is now leaderless and the capital is in chaos. The murderer is not a chi refinement warrior and he has the third princess's Sky Treasure gold badge. His identity is suspicious." After writing out the message, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion walked to the window and sent off the paper crane in his hands gently. The paper crane fluttered its wings and soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 35. Kill one man in 10 steps. Chapter 35. Kill one man in 10 steps. Dozens of chi refinement warriors gathered in the air, discussing countermeasures and staring at the entrance of Sky Treasure Pavilion at the same time. Soon after, Su Zimo stepped out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion with a long saber hung on his waist and a blood-colored huge bow in his hands. "Su Zimo, you won't be able to get away. If you surrender, your Su family may still be pardoned. Otherwise, humph, your Su family will definitely be annihilated," one of the perfected chi refinement warriors said worriedly. Within such a short time frame, someone had already told the chi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan about Su Zimo's background. "You wish to annihilate the Su family?" Su Zimo sneered. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified as he suddenly drew out 3 arrows from his quiver and coldly said, "I will exterminate you first." He bent the bow and knocked the arrow. The Sanguine Crystal Bow weighed thousands of pounds. Coupled with the huge tendons of the spirit beast anaconda, the power that it could erupt would weigh at least 10,000s of pounds. There were 2 key points in archery. First, the force. Second, the accuracy. The Sanguine Crystal Bow in Su Zimo's hands was heavy enough. Although its precision was lacking a little, it did not matter in a situation whereby the dozens of chi refinement warriors were gathered at the same place. Su Zimo did not even have to aim. He just had to shoot towards that crowd of people. Swoosh! Bow like a full moon and arrows like shooting stars. Almost simultaneously, 3 sharp arrows were shot. There was only the sound of them breaking through the air. Poof, poof, poof. Sounds of sharp weapons piercing blood and flesh could be heard. Before they could react, 3 chi refinement warriors were shot by Su Zimo and dropped to the ground. It was too fast. Many chi refinement warriors in the air were caught by surprise. They did not expect that Su Zimo would have a means to deal with them. The expressions of the remaining chi refinement warriors suddenly changed. They hurriedly redirected their flying swords and fled behind Su Zimo to distance themselves from the latter. Terror filled their eyes and fear lingered in their hearts. Given the power and speed of the 3 arrows, even perfected chi refinement warriors would not be able to dodge them. At the sight of this, Su Zimo did not hide the contempt in his eyes. He laughed out loud. "With such capabilities, you still wish to stop me?" Su Zimo strapped the Sanguine Crystal Bow on his back and unsheathed the Cold Moon Saber with a backhand grip. Thereafter, he dashed towards the outside of the capital. With the Cold Moon Saber by his side, Su Zimo was like a tiger with wings. Although the Imperial Army and guards won in numbers, no one could stop Su Zimo's killing momentum. It was in complete disarray after Su Zimo fought his way through them, leaving behind rows of corpses and blood flowing like rivers. The dozens of Qi refinement warriors in mid-air had not given up. They followed Su Zimo from afar, but the spirit weapons under their control no longer posed any threat to Su Zimo. When a flying sword shot over, Su Zimo no longer dodged them. With a wave of his saber, the flying sword would be hurled off. The level 9 and perfected Qi refinement warriors could barely control the inferior-grade spirit weapons hit by the Cold Moon Saber. However, the other Qi refinement warriors did not have such control. Although the Cold Moon Saber was a pseudo-spirit weapon, it was integrated with too many rare spirit items. Its toughness did not lose out to middle-grade spirit weapons. Complemented with Su Zimo's strong and powerful body strength, just one slash from it could dissipate all the spirit Qi on the flying sword directly. There would be a massive number of casualties if the spirit weapon that lost control were to hit the crowd of the Imperial Army and city guards. Over time, feelings of fear and terror started to spread between the Imperial Army and the city guards. When one person started to retreat, many people would follow suit subconsciously. The initial unwavering determination of the Imperial Army and guards had finally been crushed. Fear was contagious. The dozens of Qi refinement warriors lingered in the air. Their expressions ugly, and they were filled with hesitation. In actual fact, the moment that Su Zimo picked up the sanguine crystal bow, he was already in complete control of the situation. Many Qi refinement warriors wanted to dodge the sharp arrows from Su Zimo and had to distance themselves from him as much as possible. When the distance was greater, the power of the sharp arrows would inevitably reduce. The deviation from the target would also increase tremendously to allow more reaction time for the many Qi refinement warriors. But at the same time, with the increase in distance, it also meant that they needed to use more spirit Qi to control their flying swords and would not be able to hang on for too long. If they were to go closer to Su Zimo and the latter suddenly turned back and shot an arrow, one of the Qi refinement warriors would drop from the air. One had to know that the 20 sharp arrows in Su Zimo's quiver were also forged by the remaining materials used for the sanguine crystal bow. It was not any different from pseudo-spirit weapons. Once they were shot, be it at the vital body point or not, it would cause devastating damage to the body of the Qi refinement warrior if the powers contained in the sharp arrows suddenly erupted. If they were shot in the arm would become paralyzed. If they were shot in the thigh would become fractured. If they were shot in the body would explode after the sharp arrow pierced through it. At the sight of Su Zimo on the brink of fighting his way out of the capital, many Qi refinement warriors felt extremely helpless. They were torn between advancing or retreating. At the gate of the city, many guards stationed at the site had long closed the gate. 10 monstrous-sized ballistae for defending the city walls were placed in a row at the gate. The ballistae arrows were thicker and longer than the spears in the hands of the guards. The arrowheads were shining with sinister and cold lights, aiming at Su Zimo and ready to be launched at any point in time. Su Zimo's killing momentum was on the rise. Seeing that the city gate was right in front of him, he did not care about the ballistae. He held the Cold Moon Saber and charged forward. Release! The leader of the guards standing beside the ballistae lowered his arms and yelled. Swash! 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 10 huge arrows shot out, tearing the air instantly and making terrifying sounds. How powerful was the ballistae arrows? The arrows shot out could even destroy the city walls. However now, all 10 ballistae arrows were only targeting a single living person made of flesh and blood. The ballistae arrows had not been used to attack a city but to kill a human instead. This kind of situation was unprecedented in history. It was also a rare sight in the future. The ballistae arrows traveled at lightning speed and Su Zimo was still charging. In a split second, the ballistae arrows had already appeared in front of Su Zimo. The 10 ballistae arrows came together like a huge stone pillar smashing over. The aura was appalling. Ha! Su Zimo's eyes shone as he exhaled and yelled while gripping the Cold Moon Saber. Faint sounds of vibration emanated from the bones in his body. His large tendons pulsated and sounds of bowstring vibrations rang. The muscles in his body knotted together, seemingly doubling his body size. Break it! Su Zimo raised his saber and slashed the 10 ballistae arrows with all his might. Bang! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, Sparks flew as the 10 ballistic arrows actually broke in half and scattered all over the ground by the cold moon saber in Su Zimo's hands. Pest! When everyone in the capital witnessed this scene, their pupils instantly contracted into needle heads as they gasped. Even this could not hurt him. How could this be the power of a human? Although Su Zimo had blocked the 10 ballistic arrows, he had also taken a half-step back due to the impact of this force. He flung his slightly sore arms and grinned at the numerous guards at the city gate. All of you are finished. The guards at the city gate were so frightened that all colors drained from their faces. The power of the ballista were great, but loading the bow needed 10 people to pull the string and 3 people to carry the arrow over to reload it. During this time, Su Zimo had already dashed before them, not giving them any chance at all. Poof, poof, poof. Flashes of blood appeared consecutively. No one could stop the powers of Su Zimo's slash. What postnatal experts, perfected connate expert. After Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, these pugilistic experts were as useless as chickens and dogs. This was the power of cultivation. Once he stepped into the cultivation world, Su Zimo did not even need to bother about using conspiracy or endure for 16 years to plot an assassination. Let me tell you openly that I want to kill you, and you cannot escape either. Even the tightly guarded capital with chi refinement warriors could not stop me. In the blink of an eye, one after another, the guards at the city gate were fleeing desperately. Seeing that he had hopes of leaving the city, Su Zimo was instantly invigorated. He could not help lamenting, with every 10 steps a man is killed, leaving no trails in 1,000 miles, left in anguish after the matter, hiding one's light under a bushel. Ha 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 ha, the capital of the country of Yen is only as such. Su Zimo's laughter filled the sky, displaying extreme arrogance. Chapter 36. The enemy's arrival at the city gates. Chapter 36. The enemy's arrival at the city gate. At the foot of the city gate, the leader of the guards was alone and holding a steel saber. Although he could not hide the endless terror in his eyes, and the arm holding the saber was trembling slightly, he did not move half a step back. When the imperial army and guards dared not step forward, when they were fleeing everywhere, he stood his ground and guarded the city gate. Neither did he once leave or waver. His name was Yen, and guarding the city gate was his responsibility. He would not cower as long as he was alive. Come on, step over my dead body. Yen glared and shouted hysterically. He was using this kind of method to vent the fears in his heart. Swoosh! A strong stench of blood hit his face. Su Zimo was already in front of him. After getting a clear glimpse of Su Zimo's face, Yen's jaws dropped slightly. There was a flash of surprise followed by endless regret in his eyes. Earlier on, Su Zimo was covered in blood in the crowd. Even his face was splashed with many drops of blood. He looked like a slayer that had just stepped out from hell. Hence, Yen could not recognize Su Zimo. It was only when the two faced each other did Yen vaguely recall that he was the one who let this person into the city. That green-robed scholar with delicate features and carrying a bow and saber, who was mocked ruthlessly by his underling. At the same time, Su Zimo also recognized this man. The cold moon saber that had just landed on the top of Yen's head moved away suddenly. Without halting his steps, Su Zimo brushed shoulders with this man and said softly, "You are the one who let me into the city. I will spare your life." Having encountered a close brush with death, Yen felt drained of energy. He collapsed onto the ground, kneeling, panting heavily and drenched in his own sweat. Yen's mind were resonating with Su Zimo's words. He could not help muttering softly, "If I had not let him enter the city, given his powers, could he not fight his way in? Perhaps this is karma?" Yen could not resist the urge to look back. In the next moment, an even more appalling and terrifying matter happened. Boom! A deafening noise. The tall, wide and sturdy gate of the city had actually fallen apart under the impact of Su Zimo's collision. Su Zimo left the capital like a ghost, his feet barely touching the ground. In the blink of an eye, the capital of the country of Yen was far behind him. Dozens of chi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan chased him out of the capital. Looking at the diminishing view of Su Zimo, they did not choose to pursue him any further. On the one hand, They had almost used up all of their spirit chi when they fought with Su Zimo in the air earlier. On the other, these chi refinement warriors could tell that their speed was no match for Su Zimo even if they were in their best condition. How exactly did this person train his body till this extent? Someone could not help asking. The shock and terror in his eyes had not gone away. A person beside him said, I heard from the clan master that some top clans have geniuses with heaven's spirit root who can cultivate at a faster rate. Coupled with sufficient resources from the clan, before core formation, they would integrate spirit chi into their body to temper their flesh, blood and veins, refining both chi and body simultaneously. However, this person is clearly not a chi refinement warrior. The body of that kind of cultivator is indeed stronger than us, but they are far from reaching this stage. The body of this person is even more terrifying than spirit beasts. Don't feel discouraged. When the clan masters rush over, we will kill him together. I just found out that the Su family has been hiding in Pingyang town all these years. They are all mortals and can't run too far away. Yes, when the time comes, we will annihilate the entire Su family, not even sparing the fowls and dogs to vent all our hatred. On the 7th day of the King of Yan's death. In Songlang City, a pigeon carrying a message fluttered its wings and flew into the residence of the city lord. It took about 7 days to send a pigeon from the capital of country of Yan to Songlang City. Soon after, an order was passed down from the residence of the city lord. Passed down orders to the entire army. Prepare to attack the country of Yan. Luo Tianwu wore a golden armor with a long saber hung on his waist. He strode out of the residence of the city lord in a dignified manner, as if he was the ruler of a country. Looking far in the direction of the country of Yan, he could not help smiling. I didn't expect Su Zimo to really kill the king of Yan. This is heaven's will. Heaven wants me, Luo Tianwu, to become the king. This is where the events are leading to. Who else can stop me? Congratulations, Your Highness. The gray-robed old elder standing beside Luo Tianwu said smilingly. Su Zimo is quite smart, but he still fell into Your Highness's scheme of killing with a borrowed knife. After murdering the king of Yan, he will also die in the capital of the country of Yan. Ha ha ha. Luo Tianwu laughed complacently. This is an open scheme. Su Zimo knows that I am making use of him, but he still fell into the trap and helped me kill the king of Yan. Su Zimo, haha. He is just an ordinary man without any major use. He has wasted his time studying for more than 10 years. Mister, don't worry. When I become the king, I will definitely confer you the title of the country's advisor. Luo Tianwu said in a deep voice. The gray-robed elder bowed slightly, cupped his fists and said, Thank you, Your Highness. Luo Tianwu waved his arms and said loudly, Let's go. Follow me into battle. Success and dominance is happening right at this moment. Luo Tianwu had long waited for this day. The troops in the city sharpened their swords and were long prepared. Within 15 minutes, 50,000 soldiers and horses led respectively by the 5 wolf guards of Songlang City had already gathered. The army left the city, detoured Songlang mountain range and entered the borders of the country of Yan. The nearest city to the borders was Jianan City in the country of Yan. In a deserted village not far away from Jianan City, not a soul could be seen. This place was termed as the Ghost Village. The Su family had moved to this place more than 10 days ago. None of them were residing in Pingyang town anymore. These days, using elixirs refined by Song Qi to nurse his health, Su Hong's body gradually showed signs of improvement. He had recovered much. However, as predicted by Uncle Zhang, it was easy to heal the body but difficult to heal the heart. Su Hong was still bedridden and had lost his appetite for food. His eyes were empty and soulless. Each time he thought about the Su family losing all hopes of avenging the blood feud, his heart ached unbearably. Uncle Zhang and the rest were also at a loss over what to do. Looking at Su Hong recovering physically but becoming more dispirited as the days passed, everyone in the Su family mourned and sighed. On this day, Lu Yu, the head guard of the Su family, suddenly rushed into the courtyard with a complicated expression mixed with sadness and joy. He said loudly, Mr. Zhang, something serious has happened. What is the matter? Uncle Zheng's heart sank. Lu Yu said, Luo Tianwu and his 5 wolf guards are leading an army of 50,000 to attack Jianan City. They have already arrived at the foot of the city gate. Uncle Zhang drew his brows together and said in puzzlement, Luo Tianwu has been plotting for a long time. But why did he suddenly send out his troops? There must be some reason. Otherwise, he won't act rashly. Mister's conjecture is correct. Lu Yu nodded and said, according to the information from the spy, Luo Tianwu claimed that the king of Yen is already dead and the country of Yen is in great chaos. It is just that the news has not spread outside the capital. As long as the city lord of Jian and city surrenders, he will be conferred the post of premier or other additional titles. Uncle Zheng frowned, carrying a grave expression. He pondered deeply and said, since Luo Tianwu has already sent his troops, this news is very likely true. However, the king of Yen had the protection of dozens of qi refinement warriors. How did he die so easily? Who killed the king of Yen? Suddenly, Uncle Zheng seemed to have thought of something. He exclaimed in shock, second young master. Where did second young master go recently? Did anyone see him? Lu Yu shook his head and said, second young master is indeed very powerful, but I don't think he will be able to sneak into the capital and kill the king of Yen before the eyes of dozens of qi refinement warriors. Uncle Zheng let out a long sigh. He gradually calmed down before nodding and saying, that's also true. After hesitating for a moment, Song Qi, who was beside them, could not help saying, but I am afraid that your family's second young master might really be the one who killed the king of Yen. Chapter 37, Black Armored Cavalry Going for a Battle. Chapter 37, Black Armored Cavalry Going for a Battle. Upon hearing this, both Uncle Zhang and Lu Yu were momentarily stunned at first. The two turned their heads, looking shocked. After staring at Song Qi for a long time, they then said slowly, how is this possible? Pardon me for being frank. Although both of you are members of the Su family, I'm afraid you don't seem to know much about your family's second young master. Song Qi said, second young master Su is not a qi refinement warrior, but he has the ability to kill them. I'm a level 8 qi refinement warrior, but I dare not say that I will win a fight against second young master Su. During the past 10 days, Song Qi had already achieved a breakthrough in the realm and cultivated till qi condensation level 8 using the inferior grade spirit stones from Su Zimo. You're a qi refinement warrior. And a level 8 qi refinement warrior. Second young master has the ability to kill qi refinement warriors. Even a level 8 qi refinement warrior dare not be sure about beating second young master in a fight. A string of doubts emerged, making the Uncle Zhang duo a little dazed and lost in their senses. They had always thought that Song Qi was just a friend from the pugilistic world that Su Zimo knew. They interacted with him for days but did not know that the latter was a qi refinement warrior. Song Qi added, the purpose of my trip to the Su family this time is also because of second young master Su. He entrusted me to protect all of you. These words surprised the Uncle Zheng duo even more. Second young master actually had the ability to give instructions to level 8 qi refinement warriors. Uncle Zheng pondered for a while and realized that Song Qi would not sprout nonsense that did not have a basis. All of a sudden, Uncle Zheng's countenance changed greatly as a thought flashed across his mind. He suddenly asked, second young master killed the king of Yen. Can he still escape from the capital? Song Qi's eyes dimmed and he smiled bitterly. He did not reply. Uncle Zheng's expression turned ugly. He seemed to have aged a lot instantly. He watched Su Zimo grew up and looked upon the latter like his own child. In his heart, the blood feud of the Su family was definitely important but not as much as 1/10 of Su Zimo. Sigh. Uncle Zheng shut his eyes and gave a long sigh. Lu Yu said resentfully, it's all Luo Tianwu's fault. If he didn't tell second young master about what happened 16 years ago, second young master would not have died. Uncle Zheng frowned badly and shook his head. He said, news of the king of Yan's death has not spread here. The city lord of Jianan City is also not a fool. Will he believe Luo Tianwu's words? Although Luo Tianwu is leading 50,000 troops and horses for the attack, he may not succeed in taking down Jianan City either. Lu Yu's eyes were filled with endless fury. He said coldly, that Luo Tianwu is merciless and cruel. He did not forcefully launch an attack. Instead, he gathered the innocent villagers of 10 villages near Jianan City, and put these villagers at the front line to shake Jianan City. As long as these villagers retreat, Luo Tianwu would give orders to slaughter them. These villagers are unarmed and have no other way out. They can only run to Jianan City. What? Uncle Zheng was stunned. This tactic was extremely vicious. If 100,000 villagers were dashing towards Jianan City, it would create a massive force that could not be ignored. As long as the city lord of Jianan City opened the city gate, the villagers would swarm in like bees. Right on the heels of them were the 50,000 troops of Luo Tianwu. Jianan City would definitely be taken down. If Jianan City refused to open the city gate and chose to look on indifferently, the soldiers on the city wall would have to watch on helplessly as their people of the country of Yan were being slaughtered. This would result in massive fear and panic in the city, and also affect the morale of the army adversely. Moreover, there was a high possibility that some of the villagers at the foot of the city gate were their relatives. The huge battle had not even started and Luo Tianwu had already won half it. However, these innocent people of the country of Yan were sacrifices behind his victory. Although the Su family had been staying at Pingyang town all these years, they had always regarded themselves as a citizen of the country of Yan. They were born in the country of Yan and grew up there. They had a great sense of belonging to the country of their origin. Uncle Zheng waved his hands and suddenly said softly, "You can tell young master about the news of the king of Yan's death. However, please don't tell him that Luo Tianwu is driving away the people of the country of Yan and attacking the city. Given young master's temperament, I'm afraid." At this moment, the doors to a bedroom situated a short distance away suddenly opened. Uncle Zhang and trio turned to look behind them. Holding on to the side of the door, Su Hong was standing there. His face was still pale and his body weak. However, his pair of eyes was gradually regaining some luster. "Bring me my armor," Su Hong said softly. His tone was firm and resolute. "Young master, you." Tears welled up in Lu Yu's eyes. He was choking on his words. The man before him had patiently endured for 16 years for the sake of avenging the Su family's blood feud. After learning that there were no longer any hopes of revenge, he was almost down and out, bedridden and dejected. Nevertheless, when he heard that the people of the country of Yan were in trouble, he stood up without any hesitation. Although his body was weak and his injuries had not recovered, he did not hesitate the slightest bit. This was because he was the son of Lord Wooding, Su Mu, a descendant of the Su family and the young master of the Su family. "Young master, your health is not good. How would you have the strength to fight a battle? Pass down your orders. Our 5,000 black-armored cavalry will help you to fight this battle." Lu Yu gritted his teeth and said. Uncle Zheng looked anxious. He said, "Second young master is unlikely to have survived. Young master, please don't let anything happen to you. Otherwise, the Su family's bloodline will be lost." There was a flash of deep sorrow in Su Hong's eyes. He had carefully hidden the feud of the Su family as he did not wish to burden his younger brother. Never did he expect to end up with such an outcome. "You don't understand." Su Hong suppressed the grief in his heart and shook his head. "If Zimo is really the one who killed the king of Yan, I should go and stop Luo Tianwu. This is because if the king of Yan is dead and Jianan City is taken, Zimo will definitely become a sinner of the country of Yan and leave a bad name for ages. How can I, Su Hong, bear to let this happen?" But the Uncle Zheng pair wanted to persuade him but was interrupted by Su Hong. "Father once swore that he will protect the people of the country of Yan for life. Let the commoners have a safe and peaceful place protected from the flames of war to live in. Now, the people of the country of Yan are in trouble. I, Su Hong, would rather die on the battlefield with the horses and corpses than to hide here." Su Hong took a deep breath, his eyes glistening brightly. He said in a deep voice, "Anyone who attacks the borders of the country of Yan must be killed. Anyone who slays the people of my country of Yan must be killed." At this moment, Uncle Zheng seemed to have seen Su Mu's shadow on Su Hong. In a daze, he seemed to have returned to 20 years ago when he followed Su Mu in gaining victories across the battlefields and advancing courageously all the time. Such familiar words, familiar scene, same boldness and same display of one's prowess. There was nothing to fear. Su Hong raised his voice and said, "Where is the black-armored cavalry?" It was not sure when, but the 5,000 black-armored cavalry had already gathered outside. Each of their gazes were burning like fire and emanating boundless willpower to fight the battle. Suddenly, Uncle Zheng's old eyes teared up. Kneeling down on one knee, he said loudly, "Zhang Zhe is willing to follow the general to attack and kill the foreign enemies and protect our country of Yan and my people. All the 5,000 black armored cavalry dismounted from their horses and knelt down on one knee in a coordinated manner. They hollered, "I am willing to follow the general to attack and kill the foreign enemies and protect our country of Yen and my people." Su Hong clenched his fists and said loudly, "Prepare the horses and follow me into battle. May the glory of the black armored cavalry return." Watching this scene, Song Qi's heart was suddenly full of admiration and respect for this man before him. As a level 8 Qi refinement warrior, he could look down on all mortals, but at this very moment, Song Qi took his hat off to a mortal. He experienced the enthusiasm that he never had before. He experienced the family feud and country hatred that he never had before. He experienced the feelings of deep love for the people and deep love for the land under his feet. At this very moment, Su Hong's body trembled. He suddenly turned with his back facing everyone and stretched out his palm to cover his lips. Thereafter he put down his hands, looking normal and without any traces of oddity. However, Song Qi could see it very clearly. In the palm of Su Hong, there was a pool of glaring red blood. Although Su Hong's body was weak, it was no longer in a severe condition. As such, it was impossible that he would cough out blood. Song Qi was well aware that such a situation would only occur when a person's heart had ached too much but had no place to vent the pain. Although Su Hong did not express much upon hearing the news of Su Zimo's death, he had chosen to conceal his sorrows deep in the heart. Previously, Song Qi was hired by Su Zimo to protect the Su family from dangers. However, at this moment, Song Qi really wanted to protect this man from the bottom of his heart. Such a man did not deserve to die. Chapter 38. Family Feud. National Enmity. Chapter 38. Family Feud. National Enmity. Outside Jianan City. More than 10,000 villagers had been forced to flee and leave their homes by the 50,000-strong enemy army. All of them flocked to Jianan City's gate. Chao Wenxing, the city lord of Jianan City, stood on top of a defensive tower, watching coldly as the villagers fled for their lives. He waved his hands and shouted his orders. "Release the arrows." "Lord, they are our people of the country of Yen." A deputy general behind Chao Wenxing stepped forward to stop him. He could not bear to kill his own people. Chao Wenxing glanced sideways and asked, "If the inferior commoners rushed here and broke into the city, the 50,000-strong army of Luo Tianwu's would follow right on their heels. Wei Mingqing, tell me, who will bear the responsibility for it? All of us will die if Jianan City falls. Whoever dares to question my orders will be punished according to martial law." Chao Wenxing shot a harsh glance at the deputy general. The deputy general, who was named Wei Mingqing, lowered his head. Although he felt indignant, he dared not voice his opinions any further. Chao Wenxing swept his gaze over the soldiers by the city wall as he shouted, "Release the arrows." Some of the soldiers clenched their teeth and shut their eyes before releasing the arrows. Swash, swash, swash. There was a storm of arrows. The storm of arrows was able to wipe out all the defenseless people of the country of Yen. In the blink of an eye, hundreds and thousands of villagers collapsed onto the ground after being shot by the arrows. The entire place outside the city was filled with casualties and corpses. It was a heart-wrenching sight. They would die if they take another step forward, but they would die if they retreated as well. The remaining thousands of villagers knelt down outside Jianan City. They kept kowtowing and crying helplessly for rescue. It was heartbreaking. The 50,000-strong army of Zhonglang City were stationed a couple hundred meters outside Jianan City. Luo Tianwu stared coldly at the helpless people of the country of Yen. He did not feel any sympathy for them. It was these innocent people who were the first to suffer from the war between the two countries. "City Lord, please open the door, let us go in. My 2 children are dead on the battlefield. You can't treat us like this." Chao Wenxing looked indifferent. He was not the least moved. A 7 or 8-year-old child was frightened. The child broke out of a woman's embrace and ran toward the faraway distance. He had only taken a few steps when Luo Tianwu ordered his troops to shoot him down. He dropped onto the ground dead. "Ah!" The woman screamed, rushing madly to Luo Tianwu. She had yet to get close to him and she was shot down by dozens of arrows. The woman fell to the ground, losing focus in her eyes. She stared at the sky above her head, whispering, "Heaven, Please takes pity on us, who will save us? Bang! Boom! Boom! Right then, fumes and dust billowed in the wind from not too far away. The ground violently vibrated. There was a thunderous sound of hooves. A large troop of black-armored cavalry came galloping ferociously, closing in with a menacing aura. The leader was clad in silver armor, holding an iron spear of the flowing spring. There was a hideous scar on his face. His eyes were sharp and he hollered, "Luo Tianwu, prepare to die. Release the javelins." The troops were still far away from each other. The archers were unable to release arrows as it was not within shooting range. Su Hong sat atop his horse pointed forward. The 5,000 black-armored cavalry jumped into action simultaneously. It seemed as if they had been through countless training as they moved in unison. They released the long spears that they held. The flying spears seemed like locusts that ravaged the entire area. The 5,000 long spears flashed a cold glitter as they went soaring into the sky, letting off a whining sound. It was an intimidating sight. Most of the black-armored cavalry were postnatal experts. If they exerted all their strength to throw the spear, the shooting range would be further and more powerful than arrows. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior's countenance changed. He had to avoid clashing head-on with the array of spears. He used his flying sword to protect Luo Tianwu while they retreated. The 50,000-strong troops of Zhonglang City were caught off guard. Many of the soldiers fell off their horses and corpses were strewn everywhere. The black-armored cavalry kept on advancing, not slowing down at all. By the time that Zhonglang City troops recovered their senses, the black-armored cavalry had already arrived right in front of them. The arrows that the Zhonglang City troops prepared were rendered useless. Instead, it was a hindrance to them. Change formation. Su Hong yelled as he led the troops from the front, with Song Qi right behind him. The 5,000 black-armored cavalry took the long sabers from their waists and took the form of an awl. They were on a roll, looking imposing and domineering. The awl-shaped formation helped them to break into the Zhonglang City troops. Bang! The two armies crashed into each other. They fought hand to hand, and blood was spewed everywhere. It was tragic. The 5,000 black-armored cavalry created a huge opening in the formation of the 50,000-strong army. The soldiers on the city walls gave a shout of joy at the sight of this scene. Wei Mingqing was thrilled. He pointed toward the 5,000 black-armored cavalry outside the city, speaking in a quivering voice. "They are the black-armored cavalry. They are the black-armored cavalry of the country of Yan." All the soldiers in Jianan City were in awe upon hearing that the black-armored cavalry were here. To the soldiers who had been guarding the border, the black-armored cavalry had a well-known reputation. Under the leadership of Lord Wooding, the black-armored cavalry had always been able to defeat the enemy troops with a force inferior in number. They had always been their pride and the pride of country of Yan. Unfortunately, after the sudden change in circumstances in the capital 16 years ago, the black-armored cavalry had disappeared as well. However, their name had been deeply buried in the memories of each and every soldier. Is it General Su? General Su is not dead. He is back with the black-armored cavalry. Some of the soldiers were exhilarated and they wept softly. Wei Mingqing stepped forward, saying in excitement, "Lord, I volunteer to lead a troop to lend support to the black-armored cavalry. We will definitely send the enemy away." Chao Wenxing looked at him with cold eyes, speaking in an indifferent tone. "No." Wei Mingqing felt as if he was struck by lightning. Chao Wenxing said, "Su Mu revolted against the country of Yan and he died. The person outside the city is definitely not Su Mu. But they are the black-armored cavalry. I wouldn't be wrong." So what if they are the black-armored cavalry? There are only 5,000 of them. How long could they fight against the enemy? By the time Luo Tianwu gets his army under control, the black-armored cavalry will be dead meat. The black-armored cavalry dominated the battlefields, sweeping up victories wherever they went. Lord, don't you remember their reputation? This is the pride of the black-armored cavalry. General Su had spent all his life on the battlefield. He had never lost a battle. Chao Wenxing was getting impatient. He waved his hands. "Wei Mingqing, it is a meritorious achievement if we manage to guard Jianan City. Now that the two armies are fighting it out outside the city, it is the wisest choice to stand by watching others battle. No matter who wins and who loses, it will be beneficial to Jianan City."
But...
Chao Wenqing suddenly looked back, staring at Wei Mingqing with a murderous look, interrupting him. If you dare to continue with your nonsense and affect the army's morale, I will not hesitate to kill you. Wei Mingqing stared at Chao Wenqing in shock, disappointment evident in his eyes. In no time, with the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior's help, Luo Tianwu had stabilized the army and was in a confrontation with the black-armored cavalry outside Jianan City. Su Hong, you must be crazy! Luo Tianwu shouted in rage. The king of Yen feuded with the Su family and was slain by your younger brother. I am taking revenge for you. Yet you are stopping me. You have lost your mind. Luo Tianwu might have plans and ploys, but he had never expected that Su Hong would stop him in this crucial moment. The most troubling thing was that there was a Qi refinement warrior with Su Hong. Su Hong sneered. Luo Tianwu, listen well. The Su family may have a family feud with the king of Yen, but your army raids the land of the country of Yen, intruding our borders and territory, slaughtering our people. This is national enmity. Family feud and national enmity are different. My father was a general all his life and he had never lost a single battle or lost any of the lands that belonged to the country of Yen. If I allow you to succeed, I will be too ashamed to face my father. His impassioned words resonated deep down with every soldier in Jianan City. They were touched and moved by him. Wei Mingqing looked towards the back of Chao Wenqing, his gaze hardened. His hand reached slowly toward the long saber at his waist. What are you doing? Right then, Chao Wenqing turned around suddenly, discovering that Wei Mingqing had his hands on the hilt of the saber. He said coldly, Wei Mingqing, how dare you defy your superiors and have the notion of killing me? Unscrupulous official, I disdain to be in your company. I will slay you today. Wei Mingqing gave a loud shot as he drew his saber and rushed forward. Chao Wenqing sneered as he waved his sleeves and rapped the oncoming long saber. He flipped his palms, landing a heavy thrust on Wei Mingqing's chest. Wei Mingqing was at the postnatal realm. He was not the opponent of Chao Wenqing who was at the connate realm. Wei Mingqing dropped to the ground, threw up a mouthful of blood, staining his sleeves. He laughed in desperation. Chao Wenqing, you might be able to kill me, but can you kill all the people of Jianan City? Take a look at the soldiers around you. Is there anyone who is willing to work under you and risk their lives for you? You're a coward. Chao Wenqing looked around him. Everyone from the lowest-ranked soldier to the deputy general next to him had anger and resistance in their eyes. Chao Wenqing panicked slightly. The connate expert might be powerful, but he was unable to defeat all of them. If all of his troops turned against him, he would not be able to survive. Outside the city, Luo Tianwu had a grim expression as he said coldly, Su Hong, given you only have 5,000 cavalry, and you want to fight against my 50,000 elite troops? Our strength is 10 to 1. You don't have any chance of winning. Right then, there came a mighty sound from the top of the city tower. It could be heard everywhere on the battlefield. What about if you count me in? Luo Tianwu, what are the chances of winning now? No one had any idea on when a man covered in blood appeared on the city tower. He had a head hung at his waist, carrying a bow on his back and a saber with him. It was as if an ancient heavenly deity descended from the heavens. The person looked domineering and majestic. Although he seemed to have gone through hardship, he had a burning gaze that one could not help but avoid. Author's note. The introduction stated that the man was a heroic genius that heaven was jealous of. He was gifted the best among the geniuses. He could be hailed as a fiend. Right now, Zimo has only begun to reveal his fiendish characteristics. He has yet to show the true terror of a fiend. Let's talk about the title. In Immortal Sword God, the word immortal had a special meaning, so did eternal in Eternal Sacred King. I would not reveal the details here. As the book said, the Great Zhou dynasty is only a part of the vast continent. Zimo would leave Pingyang town very soon and enter the cultivation world. In the vast continent, there are many clans. It is said that there are 9 immortal sects, 8 demon clans, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 heretical doctrines, for dissident groups. To me, this is a vast immortal and martial arts world, a fantasy in abundance, bizarre and motley, covering everything under the sun. The powerful cultivators have superhuman skills, having the ability to carry the mountain and catch up with the moon, burn the sky and boil the sea, possess the power to summon wind and rain and to pluck the stars using a single hand. The powerful fiendish demons could take in and breathe out the entire heaven and earth, traveling unhindered all over the world. Chapter 39. What was the use of having you? Chapter 39. What was the use of having you? Upon hearing the voice, Su Hong and the rest had a big shock. They paused momentarily before they slowly turned back. Second young master. Second young master is back. Second young master is not dead. The crowd cheered. Su Hong pressed his lips tightly together, feeling emotional. He was very weak and feeble from the injuries. But there seemed to be a sudden influx of invisible force, and he felt energized. Unlike Song Hong and the rest, although Song Qi was just as happy, he was more surprised and shocked. Song Qi was very clear that it was very difficult to slay the king in the capital and to then fight one's way out of the heavy encirclement. The capital of the country of Yen had not just 2 to 3 Qi refinement warriors, but an entire cultivation clan with them. No one would be able to escape under the siege of the imperial army as well as the Qi refinement warriors. Song Qi knew that even if he reached level 10 perfected realm, he would never be able to do it. Perhaps, the Foundation establishment cultivators would be capable of accomplishing it. Of course, that was only a possibility. In Song Qi's eyes, Su Zimo had become even more mysterious and frightening. Song Qi turned to look at Luo Tianwu. There was pity in his eyes, as he thought to himself. The city lord has yet to realize how formidable the opponent that he faces is. Seeing that Su Zimo had returned safely, given Luo Tianwu's shrewdness, he forgot himself momentarily and was dumbstruck as well. There was disbelief in his eyes. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior behind him was even more shocked, frowning in silence. Advisor, why is Su Zimo still alive? Didn't you say that he will definitely be dead? Luo Tianwu asked in a low voice. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior shook his head. I have no idea as well. Perhaps he is lucky and he did not encounter any Qi refinement warrior. Otherwise, how can he escape from the capital? For some unknown reason, Luo Tianwu could sense fear as he stared at Su Zimo on the city tower. Advisor, should we be defeated, you must make sure to protect me. At most, we can return to Conglang City and wait for a comeback. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior replied steadfastly. Your Highness, you can rest assured that if things are not going our way, I will leave with you first. Good. Luo Tianwu relaxed slightly, feeling reassured. On the city tower. Su family? Second young master? Chao Wenxing had a shock upon hearing the shouts from below the city tower. He pointed at the back of Su Zimo, looking left and right, speaking in a low voice. When did this person arrive? His soldiers remained silent. On the one hand they had no wish to give him a reply, on the other, they had no idea as well. It seemed as if the person appeared out of thin air. Chao Wenxing was used to ordering his troops around. Now that his soldiers refused to say a word, he could not help but scold them at the top of his voice. A bunch of useless fools. How dare you allow an outsider to get onto the city wall? What's the use of having you? Right then, Su Zimo slowly turned to stare at Chao Wenxing with no expression on his face. Chao Wenxing felt his scalp turn numb under this consistent stare. All of a sudden, Su Zimo asked, Did you give the orders to have our people outside the city killed? Yes, but so what? Chao Wenxing took the sword from his waist. He steadied himself and shouted. Nothing much. Su Zimo smiled, his eyes turned cold as he said, As the city lord who guards the border of the country of Yen, not only did you not protect your people, instead you order a massacre of them. At the mention of this, Su Zimo paused slightly. There was a burst of coldness from his eyes that one's heart could not help but jump a bit. He hollered. What is the use of having you? Swoosh. Su Zimo leaped down. He was still in midair but everyone could hear a loud shriek. The cold moon saber was unsheathed. Su Zimo held the cold moon saber in his hand and jumped from midair, swinging his arm to form a huge arc. It was as if he was trying to split apart Mount Hua, as he swung the saber toward Chao Wenxing's head. This stroke was full of flaws. But, this stroke was too vicious. It was so vicious that Chao Wenxing shuddered, unable to come up with a counterattack. He instinctively raised the huge sword in his hands to shield his head. The flash of light from the saber was glaring. Every soldier could not help but squint their eyes. Snap! The sword broke in half. Poof! There were flashes of blood. Su Zimo sheathed his saber. Chao Wenxing widened his eyes in shock. There was a strange vertical red line between his eyes, cutting his face into two. The next moment, Chao Wenxing's body was split into half, and he flopped down onto the ground. Red blood kept spewing out, staining the bricks red under the wall in no time. All of the soldiers were aghast. One stroke. Chao Wenxing, who was at the Khanate realm, was split into half by the person in front of them. Su Zimo went to Wei Mingqing's side, stretching out his hands to help him up. Can you still fight? Yes. Wei Mingqing disregarded the pain in his chest. He clenched his teeth and shouted, Mister, please be assured. I will get the troops to aid the black-armored cavalry outside the city now. We will get rid of the external enemies. No need. Su Zimo waved his hand, shaking his head. There must not be any internal strife within Jianan City because of this. We must not implicate the people in the city. Wei Mingqing hurried to say, Mister, you are being too polite. It is our honor to be able to fight along the black-armored cavalry. No one would say no to it. We are willing to fight along the black-armored cavalry and behead the enemy. The soldiers on the city walls shouted. It was not until then that Su Zimo finally understood the heights of glory that the black-armored cavalry achieved back then, as well as the important figure that his father was to the soldiers. His father's achievements were so great that the king felt uneasy and insecure. This was why calamity befell him. Su Zimo said softly, Open the gate and let the people of the country of Yen in first, and settle them down. If you still want to slay the enemies, then you can join us outside the city to fight against the enemies. Wei Mingqing agreed immediately. He looked at the soldiers around him and swung his arms, shouting, Let's go, let's open the gate first. Wei Mingqing paused for a second before he turned to look at Su Zimo. Once the gate is open, all the people would flock in. Mister, you will not be able to go out for the time being. You would have to wait. No need. Su Zimo smiled and turned toward the side of the wall and jumped off. Everyone on the city walls were shocked. Jianan City was one of the cities along the border of country of Yen. The city wall was sturdy and much higher than other cities. It was as tall as 100 feet. A small piece of stone would split into pieces if it fell off from the city walls, notwithstanding human beings. Wei Mingqing and the rest hurried forward to take a look at the bottom of the walls. At the same time, the two armies who were engaged in a fierce battle on the battlefield noticed this scene as well. All the soldiers could not help but gape in shock, their eyeballs almost falling out. Su Zimo fell from the top of the city wall at an alarming speed. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Many soldiers could feel the tremor in the ground. Su Hong and the rest could not help but break out into a cold sweat for Su Zimo. They certainly knew that Su Zimo was not a fool or a madman. Since he did this, he would definitely be all right. However, what he did was still very shocking to all of them present. The postnatal experts, Khanate experts and even the two Qi refinement warriors from the two sides of armies could not help but shiver. The muscles on Luo Tianwu's face twitched slightly. He paled as he tried to maintain his composure. When Su Zimo dropped to the ground, a lot of dust and gravel came flying up. Under the watchful gaze of countless eyes, a figure loomed in the billowing dust. He took steady strides as he walked towards them, and they could gradually make out his outline and facial appearance. Chapter 40. Quelling Tsong Lang. Chapter 40. Quelling Tsong Lang. As Su Zimo approached, the sky suddenly darkened. A drastic change of weather. It was without any signs. Dark clouds loomed, covering the entire sky, shrouding Luo Tianwu and the 50,000-strong army behind him in darkness, leaving them with a tightness and unbearable feeling of suffocation in the chest. The dark clouds were constantly changing. It evolved into a ferocious man-eating demonic beast. It looked very realistic as it opened its large, fierce-looking mouth. It was a frightening and hideous sight. Bang! Boom! Boom! There were deafening and heart-pulsating sounds from the sky. On the one hand, it sounded like thunder, on the other, it seemed as if the demonic beast was yelling and snarling. Luo Tianwu, do you still remember what I said to you before I left Songlang City? Su Zimo stopped in front of the two armies, looking straight at Luo Tianwu, who rode a tall and mighty horse in the far distance. Luo Tianwu maintained a calm expression. Many thoughts flashed across his mind, and he smiled suddenly. Second young Master Su, congratulations on taking your revenge. Lord Wooding can rest in peace having such a son like you. Pingyang Town is proud to have you. As the city lord, I am very proud as well. I will return to Songlang City and prepare a banquet to celebrate second young Master Su's victory. The two of you from the Su family must make sure to come. Luo Tianwu knew that there was no hope in taking down Jianan City anymore. He quickly made the decision to retreat to Songlang City. The king of Yen was dead and the country had become leaderless. It was a great opportunity for him. However, Luo Tianwu still decided to give up. In the world of chaos, ambitious and formidable people like him had to make a decision without the slightest hesitation. Luo Tianwu would not have come this far without this resolution and drive. I had warmed a snake in one's bosom and fell short of success at the last stage. If I had known, I should have killed the two of them when they were still kids. Luo Tianwu lamented inside his mind, but he still had a bright smile on his face. In Luo Tianwu's opinion, Su Hong would definitely not chase after him if he did not fight back and return to Songlang City. In fact, as Luo Tianwu expected, Su Hong came all the way only to protect the people of the country of Yen. As long as he was willing to retreat, Su Hong would not lead the black-armored cavalry to chase after him. Once they went into battle, the black-armored cavalry were bound to suffer losses. Su Hong would try to avoid such a situation. However, Luo Tianwu had miscalculated. Because he was not against Su Hong, but Su Zimo. Su Zimo raised his eyebrows in question. Are you thinking of escaping? Luo Tianwu pretended not to know and had a smile on his face. Second young Master Su, what do you mean? Before I left Songlang City I said that I hated to be made use of, and I told you to watch your conduct. It is a pity that City Lord Luo doesn't seem to have taken my words seriously. There was mockery in Su Zimo's eyes. He stared at Luo Tianwu as he said coldly, "Are you thinking of running now? Are you able to run away?" Bang! With that, Su Zimo tapped his feet on the ground and suddenly launched forward. His strides were so rapid that it seemed like shadows. He was right in front of the Songlang City's army in the blink of an eye. There was an army of soldiers in front of Luo Tianwu. However, Su Zimo barged right into them, creating a bloody path as he advanced. No one was able to stop him in his path. Ah! Luo Tianwu was aghast, retreating automatically as he shouted, "Advisor, save me!" Gee! The gray-robed man executed his flying sword immediately. A beam of light shone on the flying sword. It turned out to be an inferior-grade spirit weapon. Swoosh! The flying sword flew in at an alarming speed. It turned into a bolt of lights, dashing towards Su Zimo's head. Su Zimo sneered, not reducing his speed in the slightest. Just when the flying sword was about to hit his glabella, he ducked to avoid the flying sword by bare inches, and continued to advance. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior's pupils constricted in shock. He had not expected that his flying sword would miss the target, and he was most surprised at Su Zimo's alarmingly fast speed. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior immediately controlled his flying sword so that it would change its directions to stab Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo made a leap and was already right in front of the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior, saying softly, "You are too weak." Bang! Su Zimo flipped his palms and rested it on the top of the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior's head. His brains burst and blood came shooting out. The gray-robed Qi refinement warrior had yet to utter a word and he dropped dead from his horse. Su Zimo lowered himself to step onto the strong horse that the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior used to ride on, and leaped into the sky once again, dashing toward Luo Tianwu, who was not too far away. Luo Tianwu was scared stiff. He had not expected that the Qi refinement warrior that he highly valued would be dismembered and slain by Su Zimo after seeing each other face to face. It was too fast. Luo Tianwu had no chance to escape. Ah! In the life and death moment, Luo Tianwu tried hard to suppress his fear. He roared loudly, taking out his long saber at his waist, using all his strength to swing the saber at Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not dodge. It was unnecessary. Su Zimo reached out his palm, grabbing the oncoming long saber, coldness evident in his eyes. There was a loud splitting sound. Su Zimo made use of his palm to break the long saber into two pieces. Luo Tianwu knew that all hopes were dashed to pieces at that moment. Su Zimo grabbed Luo Tianwu by the throat, saying loudly, "If I allow you to flee back to Conglang City, who will take responsibility for the innocent people who died because of this? When there's a war between the two countries, it's difficult to judge who's right and wrong. But you sacrificed the lives of innocent people for your ambitious dreams. I will not let you live." Snap. Su Zimo exerted strength in his palm and snapped Luo Tianwu's neck, throwing his corpse aside. He swept his gaze over the surroundings, shouting loudly, "Luo Tianwu is dead, aren't all of you going to retreat?" The 50,000-strong army of Conglang City were stunned by the aura of one single man. No one dared to move forward. Su Hong, other people and the 5,000 black-armored cavalry stood motionless in the far distance. It was not that they did not think of aiding Su Zimo. Instead it was that everything happened too quickly. All the people that were present did not expect that Su Zimo would make that move. They also did not imagine that he would be so swift and powerful. He killed Luo Tianwu instantly like lightning. Song Qi had just executed his flying sword and did not even manage to send it flying. In the fights with the other army just now, he had sparred several times with a gray-robed Qi refinement warrior. Although both of them belonged to level 8 Qi condensation, the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior was far stronger than him. But the gray-robed Qi refinement warrior only executed one style when dealing with Su Zimo, and he was slain by him. Chao Gang, the wolf guard of Conglang City, was the first to react. He took in a deep breath before he cupped his fists, saying, "Young Master Su, thank you for letting us go. Let's go back to the city." Chao Gang grimly carried Luo Tianwu's corpse. He felt deeply about the turn of events as he let out a sigh. The city lord racked his brains in scheming, but it was a pity that everything was just Destiny's game plan. Without Su Zimo, the outcome of today's battle would be totally different. Chao Gang recalled what happened 1.5 years earlier. The young man refused to bow to perfected Conglang and was reduced to an inferior commoner. He had lost almost everything that he had. Who would have thought that it was this young man who came and changed everything? Before leaving, Chao Gang could not help but look at the figure standing proudly in the far distance. The figure seemed to gradually integrate with the young man from 1.5 years ago, becoming one. Chao Gang suddenly realized that letting off the young man back then might have been perfected Conglang's biggest mistake in his life. Chapter 41. Stop the Foundation Establishment. Chapter 41. Stop the Foundation Establishment. When Wei Mingqing led the soldiers inside the city to aid the army, the 50,000-strong Conglang City army had already left in defeat. They had gradually disappeared at the end of the horizon. Wei Mingqing came before Su Hong, dismounted from his horse and knelt on one knee with cupped fists. "General, thank you for coming over to aid us. I am Wei Mingqing, the Deputy General of Jianan City." Su Hong dismounted, stretched out his arms to help Wei Mingqing up. "I am just a commoner, I cannot accept the general's praise." "General, it may be presumptuous, but can I ask what is your relationship with Lord Wooding?" Although Wei Mingqing had roughly guessed the answer, he still wanted to confirm his guess. "Su Mu was my father." Wei Mingqing nodded. "If not, no one else would be able to command the black-armored cavalry in this world and for that strong army to serve him willingly." "Brother, this is Zhao Qian's head. Take it home to pay homage to father and mother, so that they can rest in peace." Su Zimo came over, passing the head at his waist to Su Hong. Su Hong took the King of Yan's head and looked at Su Zimo. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. 16 years of forbearance, 16 years of planning. He did not expect that in the end, it was his younger brother who had to bear the burden of taking revenge for the Su family's blood feud. Su Zimo made no mention of the fight in the capital at all. However, judging from his fatigued look and the bloodstains on his body, Su Hong knew that he must have gone through a very violent battle in the capital. He had barely made it back alive. "Is the king really dead?" Wei Mingqing stared at the head of the King of Yan and let out a soft mumble. His eyes suddenly lit up and he looked towards Su Hong, speaking in a serious voice. General Su, since the king of Yen is dead, all of us are willing to aid you to become king in Jianan City. We can attack the capital and clear Lord Wooding's name. Although the king of Yen had covered up the tragedy 16 years ago, in the hearts of the soldiers, they did not believe that Su Mu would revolt. Given Su Mu's influence and status back then, if he wanted to revolt and take the throne, he had many other opportunities to do so. Uncle Zhang and the rest jolted at his words. If Su Hong wanted to take the throne, this was the best opportunity. The king of Yen was dead and the country of Yen was in chaos. Su Hong could make use of this battle to build a good reputation in Jianan City. After he took the throne, Su Hong could reveal his identity. Given Lord Wooding's influence back then, there would definitely be someone among the 16 city lords in the country of Yen who would genuinely submit to his authority. It might be possible to unify the country of Yen. At the thought of this, Uncle Zheng whispered, "Young master, this is a rare chance." Lu Yu and the rest looked at Su Hong with anticipation, waiting for his reply. Su Zimo made no comments. No matter what his brother decided to do, he would support him unconditionally. Su Hong smiled after a brief silence, shaking his head. "I thank all of you for your support and love. I don't have those ambitions. I am sorry to disappoint all of you." Uncle Zhang and the rest looked disappointed. General Su, Wei Mingqing wanted to persuade him. However, Su Hong waved his hands to stop him. Su Hong said, "When there's an outbreak of war, those that suffer are the innocent people of the country of Yen. By then, many people would be destitute and homeless, and separated from their families or orphaned. As Zimo said, if I sacrifice the lives of innocent people to satisfy my own ambitions, how will I be different from Luo Tianwu?" Su Hong paused before he cupped his fists toward Wei Mingqing. "General Wei, I have to return to Pingyang town to worship my father and mother. Let's say our farewell here." With that, Su Hong mounted the horse and led the 5,000 black-armored cavalry back to Pingyang town. Wei Mingqing and the other soldiers stood there for a long time staring at the back of Su Hong as he left. Pingyang town, backyard of Su family's residence. Su Hong, Su Zimo and Su Xiaoning knelt in front of a grave. The king of Yan's head was placed at the front. Su Xiaoning had broken down in tears. Su Hong was in tears as well. All these years, Su Zimo had never seen his older brother shed a single tear. Even when he failed to assassinate the king of Yen, Su Hong was only disheartened, but he never shed a single tear. Now that they had taken revenge, the hatred and resentment that Su Hong had been carrying with him for the past 16 years was finally released and he could not help but get emotional. Su Zimo did not shed tears. After taking some time to worship his parents, he got up quietly and left the Su family's residence, returning to the cultivation field right away. There was a flash of disappointment in Su Zimo's eyes upon entering the cultivation field. It was empty in the cultivation field. Dai Yu was not around. Su Zimo stood in the same spot for a long time before taking a deep breath. He seemed to have made a decision. He returned to the backyard of Su family's residence, giving a glance to Song Qi, and turned to walk outside. Song Qi noticed it and quickly gave chase. "Second young master, is there anything that you want to tell me?" Song Qi asked softly. After a brief silence, Su Zimo took out a golden badge and handed it to Song Qi, saying, "This is Sky Treasure Gold Badge." Song Qi was startled. To him, Sky Treasure Gold Badge was something that was unattainable. Many Qi refinement warriors would not be able to have a Sky Treasure Bronze Badge until the day they died, notwithstanding a Sky Treasure Gold Badge that was 2 grades higher. "Second young master, what is the meaning of this?" Song Qi hurried to ask. Su Zimo said in a grim voice, "After my older brother is done with the worship of my parents, bring everyone in the Su family to Conglang City and hide in Sky Treasure Pavilion for the time being. Don't come out for now. As for the 5,000 black-armored cavalry, break them into smaller groups and disperse them for the time being. Don't stay together." Song Qi had never seen Su Zimo being so grim and serious, speaking in such a deep and solemn tone. Song Qi was uneasy as he asked, "Second young master, did something happen? Does the Su family have some other more powerful enemies?" "I killed several Qi refinement warriors and offended a clan in the capital. The clan will find their way here in no time." Su Zimo did not choose to hide the truth. The reason why he could escape from the capital was because there were no foundation establishment cultivators from the Joyful clan. Now that the Joyful clan had suffered such a big loss, it was impossible for them to take things lying down. Perhaps, some foundation establishment cultivators had already set off for Pingyang town and were already on their way. Xueqi was aware of the seriousness of the situation. If a mortal offended the cultivation clans, one would either die a light death or implicate the entire family. Second young master. Where are you going? Isn't it better for you to come with all of us to Sky Treasure Pavilion and hide there for the time being? Xueqi asked. Su Zimo remained silent. Xueqi's heart sank. He suddenly thought of a possibility and exclaimed in shock. Are you going to stop the foundation establishment cultivators from the cultivation clan? Su Zimo said softly, if I don't die, the cultivation clan will never give up. The Su family can't possibly hide in Sky Treasure Pavilion for their entire lifetime. Once the Su family appears, they will be hunted down and no one would be able to escape. Moreover, 7 days have passed since the death of the King of Yen. Given the walking speed of the foundation establishment cultivators, they might have already reached. If no one stops them, they will catch up to us even before the Su family reaches the Sky Treasure Pavilion at Songlang City. But second young master. Brother Song, don't be sullen. I may not die. I might even annihilate the clan. Su Zimo smiled, putting up a strong front. Xueqi sighed, saying no more. Xueqi knew very well that Su Zimo had made the right decision. But this was in fact using his own life to protect everyone in the Su family. To stop the foundation establishment cultivators, it was tantamount to courting death. Su Zimo had no hopes of surviving. Su Zimo took out a storage bag from his clothes. This was taken from the one-armed Qi refinement warrior. He handed it to Xueqi, patting him on the shoulder, saying in a low voice, I will leave the Su family to you. With that, Su Zimo turned to leave. It started snowing. This was the first snow in the early winter. Chapter 42. Snow-Covered Bow and Saber. Chapter 42. Snow-Covered Bow and Saber. Su Zimo ran all the way toward the direction of Songlang mountain range in the snow. He ran faster and faster, his eyes clear, his gaze steady. Su Zimo had barely shut his eyes and slept for the past half a month. In addition to the fierce battle in the capital, Su Zimo was thoroughly exhausted. Although Su Zimo had the essence that was sealed inside his body by the scarlet flame fruit, it was of no help as he was mentally drained. The next battle was the real test for him. A life-or-death ordeal. If Su Zimo was an ordinary Qi refinement warrior, he would definitely die this time. However, since Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, he was not without any chance of winning. Su Zimo kept thinking about the words that Dai Yu told him. Demon cultivators are best at skipping levels and killing opponents. Given your capabilities now, although you are not as good as foundation establishment cultivators, if you are able to be in their close proximity, you will still be able to instantly kill them. Su Zimo could only rely on close combat. However, the most difficult part was that the cultivators from the Joyful clan already had a taste of his abilities at close combat. They would be on guard and he would not be given much chance at close combat. Moreover, Su Zimo had no idea about the fighting prowess of the foundation establishment cultivators. Was it simply manipulating spirit weapons? He knew that it would not be that simple. Su Zimo ran at his fastest speed, reaching Songlang mountain range in no time. Unlike ordinary men, if cultivators wanted to hurry on with one's journey, they would fly in the sky. If they wanted to reach Pingyang town in the shortest time, they needed to pass by the sky above Songlang mountain range. Su Zimo would wait here in ambush and kill the Joyful clan cultivators. Su Zimo felt an indescribable familiarity at being back in the Songlang mountain range. Here was his main battlefield. Su Zimo found a towering old tree and used his hands and legs to climb up the tree in no time. He was even more agile than the apes. He had to be in a high spot to be able to notice any suspicious activity and to make the first move. Su Zimo had to consider every detail in preparation for the big battle. This was his only way to turn the tide and survive the battle. Su Zimo sat on the old tree. He placed the cold moon saber horizontally in front of his knees, holding the sanguine crystal bow in his hand, and closed his eyes. This was his final chance to rest. The snow was getting heavier. It kept snowing, covering the entire area. Songlang mountain range seemed to be covered by a thin layer of white snow. It was crystal clear, a stunning and breathtaking sight. The sanguine crystal bow and cold moon saber were covered with snowflakes. One could no longer tell its original appearance. Su Zimo rested while practicing the breathing and expiration methods of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. His body was heating up while white clouds of vapor rose from the top of his head. Su Zimo's body might be burning, but his heart became colder each second. He exuded a piercing cold and murderous aura. It covered every corner of Songlang mountain range. Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his eyes and looked afar. A flock of birds in the forest at the far distance seemed to be given a shock. They spread their wings, soaring to the sky, emitting anxious hooting sounds. They were here. Only 2 hours had passed since Su Zimo reached Songlang mountain range. Su Zimo moved slightly and slid down from the old trees, quietly dropping onto the snow. He drew out the last 5 remaining sharp arrows from the quiver with a backhand grip, knocked all of them on the string, and moved stealthily toward the far direction. The spirit vessel was the most common flying spirit weapon in the cultivation world. It was steady, fast and had a large capacity. One of the spirit vessels of the Joyful clan had entered the sky above Songlang mountain range, speeding forward. There were more than 100 people on the spirit vessel. Most of them were level 8 or level 9, or even perfected cultivators. The 5 leading cultivators were Joyful clan elders. 4 of them were early-stage foundation establishment, while one of them was mid-stage foundation establishment. In the Joyful clan, only foundation establishment cultivator could be conferred additional titles to be the elder. In order to kill Su Zimo, Joyful clan had sent almost half of their cultivators out in a hunt for Su Zimo. It proved that the Joyful clan highly valued the operation this time. If the opponent was a cultivator, even if he was a chi refinement warrior, the Joyful clan would be wary, lest they provoke the clan that the cultivator belonged to. After all, Joyful clan was just a small clan. Otherwise, it would not have worked with one of the small states like the country of Yen. However, Su Zimo was just a mortal. Did he think that he could provoke the clan just because he had a strong physical body and he knew corporal mortification martial arts? If Su Zimo remained alive, and the Su family was not annihilated, the Joyful clan would become a laughingstock in the cultivation world. Elder Chen, Su Zimo was terrifying in close combat. All of us dared not come close to him. You must be extra careful. You must not get too close to him. One of the chi refinement warriors who was next to the elder smiled, trying his best to fawn on the elder, and to give him a kind reminder. To his surprise, Elder Chen looked upset and snorted. Is foundation establishment cultivator the same as chi refinement warrior? Do we need you to remind us? Another elder sneered. Not only would Su Zimo not be able to get close to us, even if he does, he cannot hurt us. Yes. Elder Gao is very right. The chi refinement warrior looked embarrassed as he plastered a flattering smile on his face. The chi refinement warrior seemed to think of something, but he hesitated and held back his tongue. Say what you want, the only mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator said lightly. The chi refinement warrior seemed to be in a panic, his heart still throbbing with fear. Elder Chen, the man had a sanguine big bow. The arrows that were released from it were very powerful and fast. Although it was not as accurate, if it was within a short distance, it has a high lethality. All of the elders must be careful. Hee. Elder Chen smiled, a look of disdain in his eyes, but he remained silent. Elder Gao gave a loud laugh. All of you are a bunch of useless fools. As chi refinement warriors, how can you be frightened by the bow and arrow of a mere mortal? You have shamed the clan. When we see him later, he could shoot as he likes. I will show you how I destroy his sharp arrows. Elder Gao was still laughing when a figure appeared at the old tree in front of the spirit vessel, holding a sanguine big bow in his hands. Bow like a full moon and the arrows were ready. There is a murderous aura. Initially, Elder Chen assumed a lotus position on the spirit vessel. However, he was startled and he slapped his hands on the storage bag and a talisman landed on his palm. He squashed it and shouted loudly, "Be careful!" Swoosh! There was a loud sound of arrows piercing through the air. 5 sharp arrows glittered and it reached the Joyful Clan cultivators in no time. The 5 Joyful Clan elders bore the brunt of it. Elder Chen reacted very quickly. Just when Elder Chen squashed the talisman, he also squashed a talisman and he was shrouded by a sparkling light. The other 2 elders unsheathed their flying swords, blocking horizontally in front of them. Elder Gao was the only one who was still laughing wantonly. He was slow to react and there was a shock in his eyes. The cold light grew larger and larger in Elder Gao's pupil. Poof! A black light hit directly into the chest, coming out through the body, blood bursting out from Elder Gao's body. Although the arrow did not hit the heart, the terrifying power that came with it tore the wound open and destroyed all chances of survival for Elder Gao. Elder Gao stood motionless on the spirit vessel, blood spewing from his chest and mouth. There was a look of regret and blankness in his eyes. He muttered softly, "The arrow is so fast." Foundation establishment, dead. Chapter 43. Flee with all his might. Chapter 43. Flee with all his might. Having lived in Songlang mountain range for 1 year, Su Zimo gained a deeper understanding on fighting. There were many factors affecting a fight. One's ability was the most basic factor but not the only one. Weather, mindset, environment, preparation and various details could also change the circumstance and even affect the trend of the eventual victory. On this occasion, advanced preparation and the weather were Su Zimo's advantages. One party was totally unprepared while the other party had long been waiting. Coupled with the heavy snow flying and blocking one's views, there was low visual acuity. When the cultivators from Joyful Clan came to their senses, 5 sharp arrows had already appeared before their eyes. Clang, 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 clang. Out of the 5 arrows, 2 of them hit the respective glowing shields of 2 Joyful Clan elders. The glowing shield vibrated a little and the sharp arrows bounced off them. The other 2 arrows had been blocked by the flying swords unsheathed by 2 Joyful Clan elders. However, the arrow that shot Elder Gao resulted in devastating damage to many cultivators from Joyful Clan. Caught off guard, Elder Gao, who was an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, was killed with 1 arrow. Seemingly, this arrow's power did not weaken as it continued to shoot through the air. The spirit vessel was not large. Over 100 Qi refinement warriors were divided into 5 rows as they stood behind the 5 elders, and there were 20 Qi refinement warriors standing behind Elder Gao. Even the Foundation Establishment cultivator did not react in time, much less the Qi refinement warriors behind them. The 20 Qi refinement warriors felt piercing pains in their hearts even before sighting this sharp arrow. As the vitality in their body drained rapidly, their eyes dimmed and they fell off the spirit vessel. This arrow was too powerful. After piercing through the flesh and blood of 21 cultivators, it still had some strength left. It ended up on a towering old tree with its tail shaking and swaying vigorously. An entire group of 21 cultivators including 1 Foundation Establishment cultivator were killed by 1 arrow shot by Su Zimo. That's him. It's Su Zimo. The few Qi refinement warriors on the spirit vessel recognized Su Zimo and yelled loudly. Retreat the spirit vessel. Surround and kill this man. Enraged, Elder Chen hollered harshly. Although this arrow did not hurt the other 4 Foundation Establishment cultivators, they could still feel the fear in their hearts. If they were to react slower by a bit, they would already be a corpse. Swash, swash, swash. Many Qi refinement warriors on the spirit vessel rose to the sky, unsheathed their spirit weapons and attacked Su Zimo at the same time. In a split second, successive flashes of light appeared in mid-air. It was dazzling and eye-catching. Sword auras traveled through the wind and snow like frost, engulfing the heaven and earth. Of course, Su Zimo did not think that he had the capability to contend with a clan. He was already very lucky that the earlier arrow could kill the Foundation Establishment cultivator. After shooting out 5 arrows, Su Zimo immediately fled as far as possible without hesitating. Gee! 2 Joyful Clan elders attacked simultaneously. There was a flash of light on each of the flying swords as they suddenly charged towards the back of Su Zimo's head at lightning speed. Even before the sword reached him, Su Zimo could feel his scalp exploding. A surge of bone-chilling coldness penetrated his body. I can't fight head-on. Su Zimo realized that he would still be gravely wounded if he were to erupt all his energy to block the flying swords of the Foundation Establishment cultivators. Elder Chen unsheathed a long cloth from the storage bag and held it towards the direction of the wind. On the rectangular-shaped cloth was an eerie picture of something that looked like a fearsome ghost. All of a sudden, there was a flash of light on the long cloth. That fearsome ghost suddenly opened its eyes and stared at Su Zimo ferociously, giving him goosebumps on the scalp. Su Zimo felt dizzy. His eyes blurred and he began to feel a little dazed. He shuddered in his heart and dared not look at it again. Biting the tip of his tongue, he tried to maintain soberness as he dashed forward continuously, weaving and moving in the forest, and dodging the numerous spirit weapons constantly piercing at him from behind. It was only now that Su Zimo truly experienced the change that spirit perception had brought to him. Honestly, spirit perception's usefulness was not that apparent during one-to-one fights with cultivators. However, under such successive attacks with lights filling the air and dazzling the eyes, swords and sabers clashing, penetrating gold and splitting rocks, one's sight and hearing would be greatly affected. Even if Su Zimo could see the flying sword coming over, it would be too late for him to dodge it. Nevertheless, spirit perception was different. It could sense and avert danger without even looking or listening. Su Zimo did not need to look or listen. He relied completely on an incredible instinct that was beyond description while traversing through successive flashes of swords and shadows, and fleeing for his life. Earlier on, Su Zimo shot out 5 arrows at once because he realized that the other party might not give him another chance to shoot any arrows once the fight began. True enough. The attacks were raining on Su Zimo like raging storms and a devastating downpour. He would be instantly killed on the spot if he were to pause momentarily, let alone shoot an arrow. Ooh! Terrifying sounds that stirred the souls could be heard. Su Zimo's heart suddenly leaped. He had to force himself to stop charging forward. He then flipped his hand, unsheathed the cold moon saber, turned back and blocked off the dozens of flying swords piercing towards him. Riding on the forces from the flying sword, he tilted his body, fell on one side and rolled on the ground. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Out of the corner of his eye, Su Zimo saw a ring-shaped spirit weapon smashing on the ground, creating a huge pit about 3 inches from the earlier spot where he paused his steps. If he had moved just half a step forward earlier, his entire body would have exploded upon the impact of this spirit weapon. Su Zimo took a closer look and saw 2 spirit patterns shining on this ring-shaped spirit weapon. It was a middle-grade spirit weapon. Seeing that Su Zimo had dodged the sure kill move that he had been waiting for, Elder Chen sneered coldly. He redirected the ring-shaped spirit weapon towards Su Zimo to kill the latter again. Su Zimo crawled with both his arms and legs, moving close to the ground. His body was as flexible and agile as a python as he slithered across the snow, leaving behind a curvaceous trail. The flying sword was about to pierce Su Zimo. Yet, Su Zimo twisted his body in an eerie manner and dodged the attack just in time, never decreasing his speed at any point in time. The fury in many cultivators' hearts intensified and they attacked even more viciously. Bang! 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 The spirit weapons came to nothing and smashed onto the ground countless times after brushing shoulders with Su Zimo. Su Zimo felt slight pangs of pain on his body as raging sandstones hit him. Su Zimo pursed his lips tightly. He looked calm as he gritted his teeth and hung on. The cultivators from Joyful Clan had never seen such movement techniques. He was alternating and interchanging between movements of a galloping horse, a swinging ape and a swathing python with extreme ease. Su Zimo's physique was completely beyond the comprehension of the numerous cultivators. Even spirit beasts who were known for their strong and powerful bodies definitely could not achieve this. Lad, you have to die today. I'll see where you can escape to. Elder Chen hollered furiously, waving the long cloth in his hands. The fearsome ghost on it opened its mouth and released a cloud of black mist. Who would have expected that due to strong winds and heavy snow, just as the black mist was surging out, it was dissipated by the wind and snow and then reversed towards the direction of the Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan instead. Many Qi refinement warriors were caught off guard and stained by the black mist. All of a sudden, their complexions turned purplish blue and foreheads blackened. They lost their balance in the air and were about to fall. Everyone hurriedly searched out an elixir from his storage bag and swallowed it before the poison gradually eased. Although Elder Chen's spirit cloth was only an inferior-grade spirit weapon, it could influence the opponent's mind and heart. The black mist that it released earlier was its trump card. If mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivators were slightly distracted, they would also suffer big time. Never did Elder Chen expect that his trump card would not injure Su Zimo but instead caused chaos on his own side. At the sight of this, Elder Chen hollered angrily. "What a fool! Put away that lousy cloth of yours and chase this lad properly. He can't hang on for too long." Elder Chen had an ugly look on his old face. He blamed it all on Su Zimo, and the murderous intent in his heart intensified. Chapter 44. Perfect Ambush. Chapter 44. Perfect Ambush. The joyful clan was in utter chaos. Su Zimo felt energized. He leaped up and charged diagonally, rampaging forward with the divine steed fleeting movement technique. Elder Chen and the group hurried and chased after him. At a place not far away in front stood a precipitous hilltop. The eyes of Elder Chen and the group shone. Su Zimo did not know flying techniques. He would have to make a detour in order to pass through this hilltop. As such, they could make use of this opportunity to round him up. They might even capture him alive. However, everyone from the Joyful clan could not understand why Su Zimo neither reduced his speed nor changed his direction. Instead, he charged straight towards the hilltop in front of them. Perhaps this man is looking for his own death? He wishes to kill himself in the collision? Muttered a Qi refinement warrior. Just as he finished his words, Elder Chen exclaimed in puzzlement. Before Su Zimo's figure reached the hilltop, strangely, he disappeared. The Joyful clan people rushed forward to take a closer look. It turned out that there was a cave at the foot of this hill. It was quiet, dark and deep inside the cave. A fearsome beast was seemingly bending over the ground with its big predacious mouth opened and waiting for everyone from Joyful clan to enter it. Su Zimo actually escaped into this cave. The cave was dark and sinister, narrow and small. Be it Qi refinement warrior or Foundation establishment cultivator, they could not fly in the air. This meant that the Joyful clan would not have any upper hand or advantages. On the other hand, Su Zimo turned extremely dangerous and could even possibly slay them. All of a sudden, a layer of haze engulfed the hearts of everyone from Joyful clan. It was originally a sure victory, but for some unknown reason, everyone had a hunch that they had been led around by the nose. To chase or not? If they were to chase him, how should they do it? These two doubts flashed across everyone's minds. If this cave had a dead end, that would be the best scenario. Everyone could just guard at the cave's entrance and Su Zimo would die of starvation inside. However, if this was just a tunnel in the hilltop, Su Zimo would have long escaped when the Joyful clan stayed put to guard the entrance. This was the most tricky part. If the cave had an exit, the people from Joyful clan did not even know where it was. If they were to go their separate ways, it would be very easy for Su Zimo to attack and destroy them. However, if they looked for the exit together but headed towards the wrong direction, Su Zimo would have long escaped without a trace. Damn, this inferior commoner. Elder Chen was boiling with fury, and he clenched his teeth and scolded. Elder Chen pondered deeply for a moment before gritting his teeth and saying, "Chase." After pausing for a while, Elder Chen said again, "Chen Bin, we have talismans to protect us. Even if Su Zimo closes in on us, he won't be able to break both of our defenses. We will lead the group and guard Gong Liangjing and Lu Wenqing well." Gong Liangjing and Lu Wenqing were the other two elders of Joyful clan. Although they were Foundation establishment cultivators, they did not have any talismans. The weapons that they controlled were also inferior grade ones. In the cultivation world, it was common for Foundation establishment cultivators to do without talismans and control inferior grade spirit weapons, especially small clans such as Joyful clan. This was also the reason why Elixir Refinement Master, Weapon Refinement Master and Array Formation Master had special statuses in the cultivation world. If the Weapon Refinement Master could refine middle-grade spirit weapons, many Foundation establishment cultivators would have worn out their doorsteps to make friends or exchange spirit stones for their services. With a layer of glowing shield on both Elder Chen and Elder Chen, they entered the cave first. Right on the heels of them were the rest of the joyful clan. The grounds in the cave were uneven and full of bumps and hollows. The Qi refinement warriors had many treasures in their storage bags, but they could not light up the place. They could only rely on the faint glow from the protection talisman on Elder Chen and Elder Chen to move quickly forward. The rest of Joyful Clan following behind the elders were ghastly pale. Everyone was high-strung as they surveyed the surroundings, for the fear that Su Zimo would suddenly jump out and catch them off guard. Although Gong Liangjing and Lu Wenqing were Foundation Establishment cultivators, their palms were also drenched in sweat. They were treading in the cave with fear and trepidation. The atmosphere was getting increasingly stifling. Each time there was a slight movement of grass or wind in the cave, it would cause a commotion among the crowd. Elder Chen and Elder Chen were leading the group at the front. They first observed what was below their feet, followed by what was before them, but did not look up at all. Under everyone's subconscious mind, Su Zimo did not know flying techniques. Naturally, it was impossible for him to appear from the top of their heads. However, they had forgotten one point. This was a cave. There were stone walls on the ceiling of the cave. At this moment, someone was attaching himself closely to the stone wall on the ceiling, narrowing his eyes and staring coldly at the people of Joyful Clan who were striding below him. Suddenly, Elder Chen paused his steps and said in a low voice, "Something is amiss. There is a stench of blood and it's very strong. This lad is nearby." Before he could finish his words, a flash of blinding light broke the darkness in the cave. Poof! A large skull flung off, splashing fresh blood all over the crowd. Everyone from Joyful Clan suddenly exploded in shock. Elder Lu! Elder Lu is dead. Where is he? At the top. Ah! There was another miserable scream. One of the Qi refinement warriors died on the spot. Prior to this, Su Zimo once shot out 5 arrows and managed to find out which 2 of these remaining 4 Foundation Establishment cultivator had defensive tactics similar to the augmentation talisman. With his current capability, he could not break such defenses at all. Hence, this slash of Su Zimo's were aimed at Lu Wenqing and Gong Liangjing, who did not have the talisman to protect them. However, Gong Liangjing was more alert. At that instant when Elder Chen paused his steps, he realized that something was not quite right. Hence, he bent down without a care about his pride. As such, he avoided a calamity. When Su Zimo dropped from the stone ceiling and wanted to chase after him, Gong Liangjing had already ran behind Elder Chen and broke out in a cold sweat. At this very moment, Su Zimo landed in the crowd of Qi refinement warriors. In the narrow and small cave, the Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan barely had any space to dodge. In his panic, someone even bumped into Su Zimo when he was trying to flee. Su Zimo's sinister and cold laughter resonated in the dark. "Ha ha ha! You wish to kill me. Such a small number of people is not enough." Poof, poof, poof. Su Zimo did not even need to look. With the cold moon saber in his hands, he could slay the Qi refinement warriors on sight easily with any casual wave of his saber. Along with the miserable screams of Qi refinement warriors, flashes of blood appeared constantly as they splattered everywhere. In this cave, Su Zimo was like a tiger moving into a herd of sheep, chopping those on the left and slashing those on the right, going on a rampage. The Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan could not retaliate at all. Even escaping was wishful thinking. This was an ambush targeted at the Joyful Clan that could be described as perfect. Su Zimo made use of his familiarity with the Zhonglang mountain range terrain to successfully lure the other party into the deep, dark and quiet cave. The cultivator's advantages were minimized whereas Su Zimo's merits were unleashed to the maximum. The 3 elders of Joyful Clan stood rooted to the ground, perspiring on their foreheads but did not make any moves. It was not because they did not want to. It was because Su Zimo had been moving about in the crowd continuously. His movement techniques were swift and agile. The cave was already very dim. Once they attacked, they would definitely injure their own clan disciples by mistake. At the sight of the decreasing number of clan disciples, viciousness flashed across Elder Chen's eyes. He said in a low voice, "Attack." "What?" The other 2 elders were stunned. "I said attack." Elder Chen said coldly, "We can't worry so much now. Even if we kill our clan disciples by mistake, It is better than letting all of them die in this lad's hands. Chapter 45. On the Brink of Death. Chapter 45. On the Brink of Death. In the darkness, the three elders from Joyful Clan wore capricious expressions. Simultaneously, the trio unsheathed their spirit weapons. There were 2 inferior-grade weapons and 1 middle-grade one. Swash, swash, swash. The spirit weapons shone brightly, exuding cold and sinister murderous intents and charging forward. Poof, poof. 2 clan disciples from the Joyful Clan were unprepared and killed on the spot by the spirit weapons of the Elder Chen trio. Unabated, the spirit weapons continued to charge at the vital points on Su Zimo's body. In the small and narrow cave, the people from Joyful Clan barely had any space to avoid the attacks. Nevertheless, this also meant that Su Zimo's movements would be greatly restricted. Su Zimo did not expect the 3 elders of the Joyful Clan to be so ferocious and merciless. They actually attacked forcefully without caring about the safety of their clan disciples. Su Zimo tilted his head and averted the ring-shaped sword weapon which was the greatest threat to him. He lowered his body and dodged a flying sword. Using a reverse grip on his saber, he slashed all the Qi refinement warriors in front of him. Poof! At the same time, a dot of cold light suddenly appeared on this Qi refinement warrior's chest. Another flying sword came out from this person's chest and pierced towards Su Zimo's throat. It was too close. Given the distance, Su Zimo could not avoid it at all. Su Zimo retracted the cold moon saber and then blocked the flying sword. Clang! Clashing sounds of sword and saber could be heard and sparks flew everywhere. Su Zimo's entire body had taken a huge blow. His perlicue split upon the impact and blood was spilling out from it. The cold moon saber was almost flung out of his hands. Since both parties started fighting, Su Zimo had been trying to avoid a direct confrontation with the Foundation establishment cultivators. As expected, the power of the flying swords controlled by the Foundation establishment cultivators was definitely not something that his body could endure. Su Zimo's entire right arm felt numb. He could not exert any strength at that point in time. The inferior-grade spirit weapon directed by an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator was already so powerful. If Su Zimo were to forcefully receive Elder Qian's ring-shaped middle-grade spirit weapon, he feared he would become paralyzed on the spot. Of course, this slash of Su Zimo's was not completely useless. Elder Qian's flying sword should have pierced Su Zimo's chest, but due to colliding with the cold moon saber, it deviated slightly and penetrated Su Zimo's scapula region, splattering fresh blood everywhere. This was Su Zimo's first injury since the start of the fight. The piercing pain in his shoulder region was unbearable and he could no longer use his left arm. It is so powerful. Su Zimo was secretly astonished. Su Zimo could escape without the slightest bit of injury when he fought perfected Qi refinement warriors head-on. However, the power of early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators had crossed into a different level. Fortunately, although Su Zimo's right arm felt numb, it did not suffer too huge a blow. After resting for a while, he could still continue with the fight. Su Zimo no longer dared to remain in this place. He turned, used Mountain Reliance to send the few Qi refinement warriors who blocked his way flying, executed movement techniques and dashed towards the outside of the cave. Su Zimo was unaware that, at this very moment, the Elder Qian trio were feeling even more stunned, their faces full of disbelief. He didn't die. He actually blocked Elder Qian's sword? How is that possible? He is actually still alive and jumping, and has the energy to escape outside. Elder Qian decisively shouted, "Hurry up and chase him. This lad is injured and can't run too far away." The 3 elders followed after Su Zimo first while the remaining Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan hurried over. They really did not wish to stay any longer in this cave. Before entering the cave, there were still more than 80 Qi refinement warriors. Now, there were only about 50 Qi refinement warriors left. Most of them died in Su Zimo's hands, and a few in the hands of the clan elders. In fact, everyone was aware in their hearts that, no matter the outcome, the Joyful Clan had already lost. 5 Foundation establishment cultivators had led about 100 Qi refinement warriors to chase after a mortal. That was almost half the strength of the clan. Yet, Half of the forces were killed. 2 elders were dead. The remaining Qi refinement warriors were still badly shaken, terrified and wondering what happened. "We have to kill him." Elder Chen clenched his teeth and said with a sinister and gloomy expression. Elder Chen revealed a ferocious expression and said viciously, "It will be best if we can capture him alive. I want to make him suffer endless tortures for the rest of his life, and then crush this lad's bones into ashes and chop his corpse into 10,000 pieces. We can't let the Su family off too. We will ensure that their blood flows like a river, and even the fowls and dogs will not be spared." Gong Liangjing said coldly. Everyone from Joyful Clan chased after Su Zimo. Although it was still snowing heavily outside, it was spacious and open. They had finally got rid of the suffocating pressure felt inside the cave. "Over there." Elder Chen pointed to a place in front. Not far away, Su Zimo was dashing continuously, holding onto his left arm, dripping blood and appearing extremely eye-catching on the snowy ground. "Chase!" Everyone from Joyful Clan rose to the sky and charged forward. "Brother Chen, the spirit Qi on the protection talisman can't hold on for too long. We have to subdue this lad as soon as possible," Elder Chen said in a low voice. "Once the protection talismans lose their effect, our lives will also be in danger." Once the talisman was released, it could not be effective all the time. After sustaining itself for a period of time, it would lose its effect when the spirit Qi on it dissipated. Elder Chen had such a protection talisman on him. Once the effect was gone, he would be no different from Gong Liangjing. If he were to encounter the same situation in the cave, it would be hard for him to escape death. Elder Chen nodded. In fact, he had another protection talisman in his storage bag. However, protection talismans were very precious and he did not wish to waste it. Elder Chen stepped onto the flying sword, clasped both hands and muttered a sutra. In the wind and snow, as if they had been summoned, a mysterious flow of energy suddenly surged into Elder Chen's fingertips. Ground caving skill. Elder Chen suddenly pointed to the direction in which Su Zimo was escaping. Long before this, Su Zimo had sensed a wave of trepidation in his heart. Upon hearing Elder Chen's voice, he quickly paused his steps. Boom! The ground right in front of Su Zimo seemed to have suffered a powerful impact. It suddenly collapsed and a huge pit appeared. If Su Zimo was unprepared and his legs wobbled, he would have fallen directly into this deep pit. What is this? Su Zimo's eyes were alternating between shock and puzzlement. He had already foreseen that Foundation establishment cultivators would have some mysterious means, but the scene before him was truly beyond his knowledge. Vinewood twining skill. In that split second that Su Zimo was distracted, another sound rang in his ears. Su Zimo was stunned and he secretly cursed. He wanted to go around the huge pit in front of him and run towards the other side. Unexpectedly, just as Su Zimo got up, a few withered branches and vines suddenly crept up from the snow below his feet and ensnared both his legs. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sounds of spirit weapons breaking through the air could be heard. It was terrifying and soul-stirring. At this moment, Su Zimo's body was restrained and he could not move or dodge. Once he was hit by the spirit weapon, he would die instantly. Su Zimo remained calm in the face of danger. He dropped to the ground directly, reverse-gripped the cold moon saber and slashed hard on the vines holding both his feet. Snap! The vines broke. At the same time, spirit weapons successively appeared before him. Su Zimo clenched his teeth, twisted his body till the limit and contracted his large tendons. Crisp and cracking sounds could be heard coming from the bones in his body. He had an extremely close shave with the 3 spirit weapons from the Joyful Clan elders. After successfully dodging the 3 spirit weapons, no matter how, Su Zimo could not avert the over 50 other spirit weapons that were coming towards him. Although all of them were from Qi refinement warriors, more than 50 Qi refinement warriors attacked at the same time. Hence, this was a frightening force not to be underestimated. All of a sudden, the situation became extremely dangerous and Su Zimo was on the brink of death. Chapter 46. The Spirit Monkey Appears. Chapter 46. The Spirit Monkey Appears. He had no choice but to fight head-on. In a split second, Su Zimo circulated body petrification. His entire body muscles tightened, large tendons pulsated, and he unleashed his strength to the maximum. Holding the saber in one hand, he swiftly drew an arc in front of him. There were numerous flashes of saber shadows and icy cold lights. Clang, clang, clang. Spirit weapons continuously clashed in the shadows of the sabers in front of Su Zimo. Successive sounds of weapons clashing with one another could be heard. Sparks were flying everywhere. Su Zimo's steps were clumsy and he retreated continuously. There was a sweet taste in his throat as he held a pool of blood in his mouth, refusing to spit it out. Su Zimo gritted his teeth and endured. Once he released this breath, he would instantly lose his life. Bang! Su Zimo's body landed heavily on a huge pit not far away, his mouth vomiting fresh blood. He lost his grip on the cold moon saber, and his palms were mangled and trembling. Although he had blocked the attack of more than 50 Chi refinement warriors, Su Zimo was gravely injured. Under such powerful and intensive blows, Su Zimo's body crumbled. He was covered in cuts and his green robe drenched in blood. Snowflakes that dropped onto Su Zimo's body were instantly melted by his body warmth. Su Zimo was ghastly pale. He murmured a little before struggling to sit up. However, he only felt his tendons and bones about to break, and piercing and intensive pain constantly stimulating his brain. Under such aggravating conditions, Su Zimo's body shivered and twitched uncontrollably. Everyone from the joyful clan surrounded the huge pit and looked at Su Zimo from the sky. Their eyes were full of excitement, mingled with some fear and reservation. Finally, this person was going to die. Everyone actually felt relieved of a huge burden. If they were to continue with the chase and this person hid in another cave, everyone including Elder Qian dared not guarantee that they would be courageous enough to enter it. The Elder Qian trio had been in the cultivation world for more than 10 years and had gone through many life and death battles with cultivators. However, they had never encountered someone who was so difficult to deal with. The most terrifying thing was that this person was not a cultivator but a mortal without any spirit chi. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo started laughing. Each time he laughed, more fresh blood would spill out from his mouth, making one's flesh creep. At the sound of Su Zimo's laughter, many Chi refinement warriors felt chills down their spine. Damn, he's really a madman. Some Chi refinement warriors cursed in a low voice. Gong Liangjing was having goosebumps from Su Zimo's laughter. His face dimmed and he said coldly, "I'll go and kill him." Having said that, Gong Liangjing unsheathed his flying sword, wanting to cut off Su Zimo's head. Wait a minute. Elder Chen stopped Gong Liangjing and sneered. He looks half dead. Are you still afraid that he will escape? We'll spare his life first, then bring him back to the clan and give him a good round of torture. We'll make sure that he begs for death. What are you laughing at? At this juncture, Elder Chen suddenly asked. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Zimo. Hee hee. There was a flash of mockery in Su Zimo's eyes. Tilting his head, he spat out a mouthful of blood, raised his brows and said, "Do you really think that you will surely win? Mark my words. Songlang Mountain Range will be your tomb." Just as he finished his words, he gave out a deep and deafening roar, Sanguine Ape Transformation. The Sanguine Ape Transformation was the last style of the Sanguine Ape Tri-style. In Dai Yu's words, this style was the essence and also a forbidden skill that could not be used unless one was on the brink of death. Su Zimo rampantly circulated the incantation of Sanguine Ape Transformation, and constantly did breathing and expiration. If he did not use this style at this juncture, he would no longer have any chance to do so. At the sound of the 3 words Sanguine Ape Transformation, everyone from Joyful Clan jumped in shock. Elder Chen and Trio shuddered and moved a step back instinctively. Everyone's expression was grave as they fixed their gazes at the Su Zimo in the deep pit, preparing to attack at any point in time. However, after about 10 moments of breath, Su Zimo was still sitting in the pit, looking expressionless and still. Nothing changed. Su Zimo's heart sank deeply to the bottom. How could this be? After circulating the Heart Sutra of Sanguine Ape Transformation, there was no change to his body. Su Zimo could still feel the pain from the various parts of his body. He felt drained and listless. Previously, when he was rounded up by the wolf packs, Su Zimo had just cultivated Tendon's transformation and was not qualified to release Sanguine Ape transformation. Now, Su Zimo had already begun cultivating the Bones Strengthening section. Why did nothing happen when he circulated the Heart Sutra and incantation for Sanguine Ape transformation? This was Su Zimo's last trump card. In the end, he discovered that he could not use this trump card when he took it out. As the Sanguine Ape transformation was a forbidden skill, Su Zimo had never released it before. This was his first time. Su Zimo's first reaction was that he did not cultivate it correctly. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Su Zimo racked his brains and tried to figure out this puzzle. However, this was not the cultivation field and Dai Yu was not beside him. Instead, a group of cultivators full of murderous intent in their eyes was staring at him ferociously. No one would help him clear his doubts and the other party would not give him that much time. After waiting for a while, everyone from the Joyful clan discovered that they could not find the slightest bit of change on Su Zimo. They had been tricked. Everyone was enraged. Damn! This inferior commoner can still think of fooling us. One Chi refinement warrior cursed and scolded loudly. Kill him! Kill him! Everyone was aggravated and many Chi refinement warriors were shouting above him. Almost everyone had their attention on Su Zimo, but no one noticed that, in the forest behind them, amidst the wind and snow, a tall and huge figure was swinging on the tree branches and approaching them at lightning speed, eyes flickering with flashes of blood. His murderous intent was strong. Su Zimo exclaimed in puzzlement. He suddenly smelled a familiar and pungent odor and looked up instinctively. Right behind everyone from Joyful Clan, a tall and huge figure leaped down from the towering old tree, dropping from the sky with a furor. Holding an alloy steel rod in one hand, it was swinging it towards the Chi refinement warriors in front of him. Poof, poof, poof. The skulls of a total of 5 Chi refinement warriors were smashed by this rod. Their brains split and their headless corpses fell into the pit. Spirit beast. It's a spirit beast. Be careful, everyone. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Damn monkey! Su Zimo rejoiced greatly in his heart. The big and tall figure that rushed here to help was none other than the spirit monkey, whom Su Zimo had lived together with for 6 months in Songlang mountain range. The alloy steel rod in the spirit monkey's hands was the inferior-grade spirit weapon left behind by that Joyful Clan Chi refinement warrior who died in Su Zimo's hands previously. He did not know when the spirit monkey picked it up to become its weapon. Just as the joy in Su Zimo's heart rose, it completely turned into worries. Although the spirit monkey was powerful, he could only defeat the Chi refinement warriors. After all, it had not advanced to the realm of a spirit demon. Furthermore, the spirit monkey had the same weakness as Su Zimo. It could not fly in the sky. At the thought of this, Su Zimo hollered, "Damn monkey, quickly scram!" Chie, che. The spirit monkey opened its mouth and laughed, seemingly oblivious to Su Zimo's shout. After killing all 5 Chi refinement warriors at once with one hit from the rod, it did not pause as it leaped into the pit, grabbed Su Zimo and carried the latter on its back. Thereafter, it tried to escape out of the pit without even turning its back. The spirit monkey was very smart. Although he could not differentiate the realms that the cultivators were at, it knew how to assess the situation. Since Su Zimo had been beaten up so badly to the point of no escape, he was definitely not their match. Hence, the spirit monkey's first thought was not to forcefully fight with the Joyful Clan but to bring Su Zimo out of the place. Chapter 47. Landed in a desperate situation. Chapter 47. Landed in a desperate situation. Which bastard dares to wreck the important matter of my Joyful Clan? Elder Chen was instantly enraged. After a moment of distraction, he leaped onto the flying sword in the sky and led everyone from the Joyful Clan to chase after them. Flashes of light streaked across the sky. Elder Chen's face was ghastly pale as he glared at Elder Chen, clenched his teeth and scolded, "Look at your jinxed mouth." Earlier on, Elder Chen had just said that it was impossible for Su Zimo to escape given the latter's grave injuries. In the end, an unknown spirit monkey sprang out of nowhere and killed a few of the clan disciples. It even saved and took Su Zimo away. Elder Chen wore an innocent expression. For the sake of chasing and killing this Su Zimo, Elder Chen had already been scolded harshly by Elder Chen twice. He was also enduring a bellyful of anger, and had nowhere to vent his frustration. Elder Chen looked at the spirit monkey who was dashing far ahead. His eyes filled with resentment and malice, he said coldly, "This bastard's speed is not fast. It can't run for too long." Similar to what happened 6 months ago when Su Zimo was surrounded by the wolf packs, at a time when he faced critical danger, it was the spirit monkey who stood up for him and saved him from the doors of hell. However, the situation this time was different from that 6 years ago. The spirit monkey was clever at ascending hills and adept at climbing rocks. It could also leap and swing with extreme ease in the forest. However, speed was not its forte. Furthermore, the spirit monkey was carrying someone on his back. Su Zimo made use of environment, terrain and external factors to cause the Joyful clan to suffer heavy casualties. However, these factors also made it very hard for the spirit monkey to steer away from the Joyful clan's line of sight. These external factors were a double-edged sword. It could benefit both the self and the enemy. It was the beginning of winter and heavy snow was falling. Although the withered trees were still around, they were barren. Without the green, luxuriant forest and camouflage of thick, dense branches and leaves, the trails left behind by the spirit monkey's escape were visible with one glance. Su Zimo felt listless all over. He leaned on the spirit monkey's back and listened to the winds howling by his ears. His heart was full of sorrow and misery as he said in a low voice, "Damn monkey, we can't escape. Put me down and leave on your own." The spirit monkey did not utter a sound. Streams of mist surging out from its nostrils, it dashed forward continuously, sweating profusely. Obviously, it was already using all its might and exhausting a lot of energy. The sounds of clothes flapping in the air were coming closer and closer. The speed of the Chi Refinement Warrior's sword kinesis flight was obviously much faster than that of the spirit monkey. Su Zimo sighed gently, "Monkey, these people only want to kill me. Put me down and you still have hopes of escaping. Otherwise, if we continue like this, they will catch up with us in less than 15 minutes. We will both die here." The spirit monkey continued to keep mum. His expression was obstinate and his gaze sharp. He stubbornly dashed ahead. Su Zimo clenched his teeth and punched the spirit monkey's shoulders harshly. He said loudly, "Leave me alone and only one of us will die. If you take me along, both of us will die. This is such a simple logic. Why can't you understand? Why can't you understand? Damn monkey, aren't you very smart and quick-witted? You've become a fool. Quickly scram." Roar! Roar! The eyes of the spirit monkey reddened. It suddenly roared loudly, shaking the heaven and earth. Upon the impact, snowflakes on the surrounding old trees fell one after another. The Joyful clan group following closely behind were shocked at the sudden roar from the spirit monkey. Fear, furor, or hopelessness? They did not know. However, Su Zimo understood. Yours truly wants to do so. It's none of your business. This was the spirit monkey's response to him. The spirit monkey was not stupid. From the moment that it saved Su Zimo, it already knew that they would possibly die here. However, the spirit monkey still saved him. 6 months ago, the spirit monkey saved Su Zimo because of its enmity with the wolf clan. 6 months later, the spirit monkey saved Su Zimo because it saw him as his buddy, a buddy that he could share weals and woes with and live and die together. This was the chemistry between a man and a monkey. There was telepathy without the need to communicate in words. Su Zimo was silent for a while. He then laughed. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo laughed heartily. The Joyful clan group looked puzzled. They did not understand why Su Zimo could still laugh, and in such a hearty and happy manner. Their hearts were already numb and they could not understand the friendship between Su Zimo and the spirit monkey. In the eyes of everyone, the spirit monkey was basically a beast that had not attained spirit intellect, and Su Zimo was a man struggling on his deathbed. However, the more Su Zimo laughed happily, the angrier they felt. Attack! Elder Chen gave orders. Many flying swords tore the wind and snow and dashed towards them, filling the air. With just a bit of effort and the distance between the two parties had closed so much, they were already within the Joyful clan group's geographical scope of attack. The spirit monkey ran left and swung right. Bending its body at one point and leaping at another, It dodged the attacks with all its might. Poof! Flashes of blood appeared. The spirit monkey trembled for a while and staggered. Thereafter, it straightened its back and continued to dash on, pretending that nothing had happened. Xueqi looked down and saw that the spirit monkey's thigh had been pierced through by a flying sword. It was bleeding heavily non-stop. A striking and scarlet bloody trail was left on the snow behind it. Xueqi's heart ached. He could clearly sense that earlier on, this sword was heading towards the middle of his back. However, at the 11th hour, the spirit monkey suddenly jumped. The spirit monkey noticed Xueqi's concern. It tilted its head and smiled. It looked a little silly, seemingly wanting to make Xueqi feel assured. Xueqi's sight gradually turned blurry. He was not sure if it was because the snowstorm was too strong or other reasons. The spirit monkey's speed had obviously slowed down. Its steps were also not as swift and agile as before. It was limping, looking a little unkempt and pitiful. Its thigh had been pierced through and it must be dying of pain. How could it be all right? However, the spirit monkey still did not give up. Suddenly, the spirit monkey threw away the alloy steel rod in his hands, hurled Xueqi in front of his chest and carried him. This was just a simple action, but Xueqi understood further. The spirit monkey was worried about the flying swords coming from behind. It was worried that the flying sword would hit Xueqi first. Hence, it carried Xueqi in front of its chest while bearing its own back to the flying swords. The joyful clan group was right on their heels and closing in. All of a sudden, the corner of Xueqi's eyes twitched vigorously. His scalp was blistering and he broke out in goosebumps. It was extremely dangerous. Without the cold moon saber by his side, Xueqi took out the sanguine crystal bow immediately. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a ring-shaped spirit weapon amongst the many flying swords behind the spirit monkey. 2 dazzling and eye-catching spirit patterns were shining on it. The spirit monkey did not sense the threat of his ring-shaped spirit weapon. It could barely dodge the many flying swords. More wounds appeared on its body, and flesh and blood could be seen. It was a gruesome sight. This ring-shaped spirit weapon was charging towards the middle of the spirit monkey's back. They could not avoid it anymore. Xueqi bit the tip of his tongue. He exhausted all of the remaining strength in his body, raised the sanguine crystal bow and smashed towards the ring-shaped spirit weapon. Clang! Xueqi's entire body was shaken. The sanguine crystal bow left his hands. A cloud of bloody mist erupted from Xueqi's entire right arm. His skin burst open and his large tendons broke. All the bones in his arms were fractured and hanging down. This was a middle-grade spirit weapon, and the mid-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator launched the attack with all his might. Xueqi could not endure it at all. The ring-shaped spirit weapon paused momentarily upon the impact of the sanguine crystal bow, but it still smashed heavily on the spirit monkey's back eventually. Bang! The spirit monkey's back caved in deeply. Horrifying sounds of bones breaking could be heard. Its entire body was shaken. Carrying Xueqi, it was directly hurled into the air before falling onto the snowy ground nearby. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.